ito ay positive. Ito ay negative. Then ito ay positive. So anong ibig sabihin yan? Para makompute ko ang resultant nito, para makompute ang resultant, that is positive F1 minus F2 plus F3. Okay? So ibig sabihin, madali lang mag-compute ng forces or ng resultant kapag ang force system ay parallel. Eh sir, paano po pag non-concurrent? Pag non-concurrent at saka concurrent. Yun yung i-discuss natin later. Okay? But for now, any question muna? May tanong? None so far po, sir. Okay, so thank you. Kung walang question, sige, discuss natin ano ba yung several ways para makapag-compute ng resultant. So, bigyan ko ng mga techniques on how you will solve your resultant. Mamaya, bibigyan ko rin kayo ng way on how you will compute using your calculators. Okay? Sige, start tayo with parallelogram law. Okay? So, ito yung pinakamadaling way para makapag-compute ng resultant. You can use your parallelogram law. Okay? Ano ba pag sinabing parallelogram law? Parallelogram law which states that the resultant, o di ba? Ginagamit yan sa pag-compute ng resultant. Kaso ng ilan lang? Resultant of two forces. So hanggang dalawa lang ang kaya niyang computein. Resultant lang ng hanggang dalawang forces lang. Okay? The resultant of two forces is the diagonal of the parallelogram formed on the vectors of these forces. Then you use or you analyze using triangle law. Okay, sige. Para mas maintindihan, magbigay tayo ng sample. Let us say, kukumpitin natin ng resultant nitong F1 at F2. Again, si parallelogram law ay pwede lang gamitin sa resultant ng ilang forces lang? Dalawa lang. So let us say resultant ni F1 at ni F2 o meron tayo ditong dalawang forces. Okay? So meron na tayo ditong dalawang forces. Pinapahanap ano daw ang resultant nito. Para daw makuha ang resultant, ano daw yun? Yun daw yung diagonal ng parallelogram na mabubuo gamit itong dalawang to. Okay? So, kailangan daw nating bumuo ng isang parallelogram. Okay? O, paano tayo makakagawa ng parallelogram dito? Before we form a parallelogram, i-define muna natin ano bang tawag sa dalawang to. Ang tawag po dyan ay localized vectors. Pag sinabi po nating localized vectors, yun yung original na forces ninyo. Pag sinabing original, yun yung original magnitude, F1 and F2. Yun yung original direction. Original direction ito, upwards to the left. Ito, upwards to the right. And original position. Yung position natin ay nandito sa point na to. So, technically, pag sinabing localized, ang keyword nyo dyan, original. Eh, sabi, kailangan daw natin gumawa ng parallelogram. Okay, o, paano tayo gagawa ng parallelogram? Magdo-drawing tayo dito ngayon ng tinatawag natin na free vectors. Pag sinabi naman pong free vectors, yun yung kumbaga kakambal nitong dalawang to. O, paano gagawin yon? Kunin si F2, kokopyahin nyo sa tip ni F1. Ito yon. Kunin si F1, kokopyahin nyo sa tip ni F2. So, ito yon. Okay? So, ito po ang free vector ni F1. Ito naman po ang free vector ni F2. Okay? So, technically, ang gagawin nyo lang, i-mirror image nyo lang. Okay? So, si F1, kopyahin sa tip ni F2. Ito po yon. Si F2, kopyahin sa tip ni F1. Ito po yon. And then, naka-form na tayo dito ng parallelogram. Okay? Nasundan po. And again, ang tawag po sa dalawang to, ang tawag dyan ay free vectors. Pag sinabing free vectors naman, parehas ang magnitude, ito parehas F2, Ito parehas F1. Parehas ang direction. Pag sinabing parehas ang direction, ito po ay parallel dito, while ito ay parallel sa other side. Okay? Kaya naka-form tayo dito ng parallelogram. And anong sabi? Yung diagonal daw, yun daw yung resultant ng dalawang forces. So kapag kinonect ko daw to, ito yung diagonal, yan po yung resultant. So that is one way to calculate for your resultant using parallelogram law. Okay? Kaso hindi naman natin ito ma-analyze using the whole parallelogram. So ang gagawin natin dyan, hahatiin natin sa gitna. O tanong, anong shape ang ma-form kapag nahati natin sa gitna? Pag nahati natin yan sa gitna, makaka-form na kayo ng triangle. So pwede na natin gamitin yung sine law, cosine law, at trigonometric functions kapag right triangle. Okay? So that's one way to calculate for your resultant. Again, for parallelogram law, resultant lang ng hanggang dalawang forces lang. Anong gagawin? Copy sa tip ng other force, i-connect ang diagonal, that will be your resultant. Hatiin sa gitna, analyze as a triangle. Okay? Sige, any question? May tanong po. So far, wala bang question? Sige, para mas maintindihan po natin si parallelogram law, ang gawin natin, mag-solve tayo ng problem. Okay? Try natin i-solve yung problem. Let's start with problem number 1. Okay, sige. Problem number 1 tayo. The 300-pound force is to be resolved into components along lines AA prime and BB prime. Okay, so given this figure, pinapahanap sa inyo for the first question, determine the angle alpha knowing that the component along line AA prime is 240 pounds. Okay, makinig. Dito sa problem na to, si 300-pound daw na force ay i-resolve into components. Components along AA prime and BB prime. So ilang components ang meron tayo? Meron tayong components sa AA prime, meron tayong component sa BB prime. So meron tayong dalawang components na ang resultant ay 300 pounds na force. Okay? So ibig sabihin, ito pong 300 pounds, ito yung resultant. Nino? Nung force sa AA prime at force sa BB prime. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, resultant ng dalawang forces. Sige, isa-isayin natin. Ito po yung force along AA prime. So, that is F AA prime. Ito yung force along BB prime. So, that is the force along line BB prime. Okay? Anong sabi natin? Ang sabi natin, resultant ng dalawang forces. Pwede ba ako mag-parallelogram law? Yes. Pwede ako mag-parallelogram law such that itong una, ika-copy natin sa tip ng other force. Then itong isang to, ika-copy natin sa tip ng other force. So therefore, this is the free vector of AA prime. And this one is the free vector of BB prime. Tama? Ano bang resultant ng dalawang to? Ang resultant nila ay yung 300 pounds. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, yung diagonal nito, sabi natin sa parallelogram law, yung diagonal ang resultant. So, ibig sabihin, ang diagonal na to, ang magnitude niyan ay yung 300 pounds. Okay? I hope nasundan. Ang resultant ng dalawang to ay yung 300 pounds. So, yung diagonal ay equal sa 300. Okay? So, paano natin ito masasolve? Anong sabi ko kanina? Huwag i-analyze as a whole. Anong gagawin? Hatiin sa gitna, i-analyze as a triangle. So analyze natin itong triangle na to. Let's say itong triangle na to. Let's start. This one is your FAA prime. This one is your FBB prime. Tapos yung resulta na to, ito yon. Tama? Itong triangle na to ay itong triangle na to. Okay? Eh ano daw ang magnitude nito? Ang magnitude daw nito ay 300 pounds. Okay? Ang pinapahanap is the value of alpha. So para ma-analyze natin yan, kailangan nating mahanap itong angle na to. Kasi based sa figure na to, ito po si angle alpha. Nakuha po? Okay. Binigay din po sa problem na itong force na to along AA prime ay equal daw sa 240 pounds. Okay? So, paano natin masosolve itong alpha? Masosolve ko yan kapag nahanap ko itong other angles. Tanong, tama bang ito ay parallel dito? Yes, they are parallel. Anong sabi ko sa inyo kapag parallel? They have the same slope from the same reference line. So, ibig sabihin, ito horizontal to. Eh, itong dalawang to, parallel. Tama? So, ibig sabihin, kung ano man ang angle nito, yun din yung angle dito. Tama? Kasi isang diretsong linya lang to. Eh, parehas ng slope tong dalawang to. So, ibig sabihin, kung ito ay 60 degrees, ibig sabihin, itong angle na to, 60 degrees din. So, kapag tinignan ko yan dito, ito po ang 60 degrees. Okay? So, kung 60 degrees po ito, makukuha natin itong last angle. O, paano ko makukuha yung last angle na to? That is, ano ba ang sum ng interior angles ng triangle? 180. So, 180 minus 60, that's 120. Minus alpha, so itong angle na to is 120 minus alpha. Okay? So, paano natin masosolve yan? Masosolve natin yan using sine law. Okay? Paano masosolve using sine law? That is sine 60 degrees. Anong opposite ni sine 60? That is 300 pounds. That is equal to sine of alpha. Sorry, sine of 120 minus alpha kasi itong opposite side niya, yun yung may value. So, sine 120 minus alpha divided by, ano pong opposite? 240. So, you now have your one unknown. You can now solve for the value of alpha. Okay? Sige, pakisolve po. Ano po ang value ng alpha? Or pwede rin naman natin gawin, isolve natin yung calculator. Question, nakikita po niyo yung calculator? Nakikita niyo po ba yung calculator? Yes, sir. Okay, sige. Try natin isolve using this calculator. That is sine of 60 over 300. Okay? I-cross multiply ko na lang to. Wag na tayo mag-shift solve ha. Masanay po tayo walang shift solve. Cross multiply. So magkakaroon ako dito ng multiply by 240. Equals. Okay? So para mawala yung sign, arc sign ko yung kabila. So ibig sabihin arc sign. Okay? Itong angle na to, ito yung equal kay 120 minus alpha. So yung alpha is 120 minus yung nakuha natin na angle, which is your answer. Okay? So the answer is 76.15 degrees. So therefore, the answer is 76.15 degrees. And that is your answer for question number 1. Okay? So therefore, that is your answer for question number 1, 76.15. Sa mga hindi sanay na mag-simplify ng equations, pwede nyo namang i-shift solve. Okay? So shift solve, type nyo lang to, then shift solve. Okay po? Okay, what about for question number 2? Pinapahanap for number 2, what is the corresponding value of the component along BB prime? So pinapahanap is yung force sa BB prime. Okay? Since meron ka ng value ng alpha, Meron kang 300 dito, meron kang 240 dito, para maiba lang, let us use cosine law. Okay, cosine law naman ang gamitin natin. Actually, pwede naman kayong mag-sine law kasi equal din dito sine alpha over f bb prime. Eh may value naman na kayo ng alpha. Okay? Pero para maiba lang, gamitan natin ng cosine law. That is your fbb prime squared. That is equal to what? Square nung first side at nung second side. So therefore, that is 300 squared plus 240 squared. Minus 2 times product nung dalawang sides, which is 300 and 240. Then cosine of the opposite angle, ang opposite ni BB prime ay alpha. So cosine of 76.15 degrees. Okay? So in this case, you can now solve for the component along BB prime. Sige, try natin ha. Sorry. Okay, that's 300 squared plus 240 squared minus 2 times 300 times 240 cosine of 76.15. Okay? Press equals. Kaso hindi pa ito yung sagot kasi equal pa yun sa naka-square. So therefore, take the square root. You will get 336.35. Okay? If you're not round off, the exact answer is 336.33 pounds. Nevertheless, malapit naman yung sagot. Okay? So therefore, that is your answer for number 2. Any question? Ayun, may sumagot. 336.34. Okay po? Any question for problem number 1? May question po. Malinaw po ba yung problem? So far, mukhang malinaw naman. Walang nagpo-question. Okay. But again, tatandaan, ang parallelogram law ay pwede mo lang magamit kapag resultant lang ng dalawang forces. Okay? Ang tanong ngayon sa inyo, sir, paano po kapag more than 2 na yung forces natin? So, hindi na tayo pwede mag-parallelogram law. Okay? So, again, si parallelogram law ay pwede lang gamitin kapag kapag 2 forces lang. Okay? Kapag more than na, hindi na natin pwedeng gamitin yan. So, ano pang ibang way para ma-solve natin yung resultant without using parallelogram law? Okay? So, discuss natin yung ibang ways para ma-solve yun. But before that, discuss muna pala natin, meron pa tayong problem number 2. Sige, try natin yung parallelogram law pa para mas maintindihan natin. Problem number 2 muna tayo. Okay, for problem number 2, a barge is pulled by 2 tugboats. Ito yun. Okay? If the resultant of the forces exerted by the tugboats is a 5,000 pound force directed along the axis of the barge, determine the tension in each of the ropes knowing that alpha is 45 degrees. Okay? So, dalawang forces lang naman ang humihila sa tugboat natin. Meron tayong rope 1, meron tayong rope 2. At tatandaan po, kapag ropes, lagi yang tensile. Kasi kung ito yung rope nyo, pag hinila mo, may resistance. Pero kapag tinulak mo, walang resistance. Okay? So tatandaan po, kapag po ropes or cables, lagi pong tensile ang force. Okay? So let us say this is your cable 1 or rope 1, this is your rope 2. Ilagay natin yung forces. Cut natin to, cut natin to. Lalabas po dito, tensile force for rope 1. This one is the tensile force for rope 2. Anong sabi? Ang resultant daw ng mga yan is a 5,000 pound force directed along the axis of the barge. So, ibig sabihin, binigay yung resultant. So, ang gagawin natin, kukunin natin ang resultant ng dalawang to. Okay? Resultant ng dalawang forces. So, ibig sabihin, parallelogram law pa din. Tama? O, anong gagawin pag parallelogram law? Ito, kokopyahin sa tip ng other force. So, ito ay T1. Itong isang to, kokopyahin din sa tip ng other force. So, therefore, this is your T2. Kaya nung sabi, ang resultant ay yung diagonal. Dalawa ang diagonal nyo dyan. Okay? Ang diagonal nyo dyan, pwedeng ito, pwedeng ito. Tama? Kaso may sinabi dyan, directed along the axis of the barge. So, ibig sabihin, ito yung axis ng barge nyo. So, ibig sabihin, ito yung resultant ninyo. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, yung resultant na yan ay horizontal kasi directed along the axis of the barge. So, ibig sabihin, ito ang ating resultant force, which is equal to 5,000 pounds. Ano ang pinapahanap? Tension in each of the ropes. So, ibig sabihin, ang pinapahanap ay value ng T1 at saka ng T2. Okay? So, paano natin makukuha ang value ng T1 at saka ng T2? Again, hatiin sa gitna, analyze as a triangle. Okay po? So, ibig sabihin, ito yung T2, ito yung T1, at ito yung resultant na 5,000 pounds. Okay po? Question ko sa inyo, binigay ba ang value ng alpha? Yes, binigay po yan, 45 degrees. So, ibig sabihin itong angle na to, that is 45 degrees. Okay? Next one, ito si T1. Ito ay T1 din. Tama? Ito ay horizontal. Anong angle ni T1 sa horizontal? 30 degrees. So, kung 30 degrees to, since ito ay parallel dito. Tama? They are parallel. Kung ano man ang angle nito, dito sa horizontal, yun din ang angle nitong T1 na to, dito sa horizontal. So, ibig sabihin kung ito po ay 30 degrees, ito ay 30 degrees din. Okay? Parehas lang itong angles na to. Kasi ito ay parallel dito, at itong isang to, common siya dito sa T1 na to at sa T1 na to. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, ang angle na to, that is equal to 30 degrees. 45 ito, 30 ito. So, ibig sabihin, 75. So, ibig sabihin, makukuha natin itong last angle, 180 minus 45 minus 30. So, therefore, you have here 105 degrees. Okay po? So, we can now solve for the value of T1 and T2 using your sine law. Okay, so using sine law, that is sine 105 degrees, ang opposite, 5,000 pounds. That is equal to sine 45 degrees, ang opposite ay T1. And that is equal to sine 30 degrees, ang opposite ay T2. So you can now solve for the value of T1 and T2. Okay, solve natin isa-isa. Okay, what about for T1? That's 5,000 sine 45 degrees over 5,000 sine 45 over sine 105. Okay, so calculating for your answer, you will get 3,660.25 pounds. What about for T2? For T2, that's 5,000 sine 30. So technically, papalitan lang natin yung angle. That's 5,000 sine 30 divided by sine 105. You press equals, you will get 2,588.19 pounds. And those are your answers for problem number 2. Okay? Any question? May tanong po? Going once, twice, thrice, none po, sir. Okay, so thank you. So kung walang question, let's now try to discuss paano naman po kumuha ng resultant ng more than 2 forces. So kapag 2 forces, automatically isipin agad parallelogram law tayo. Okay? Pero kapag sumobra na sa dalawa, hindi na pwede ang parallelogram law. Okay? So start natin. Paano po ba mag-solve ng resultant ng force system na kapag more than 2 forces na? Okay? Kapag more than 2 forces na po, una, ang gagawin natin, concurrent force system. Pag concurrent force system, madali lang yan. Let's say ito yung sample natin. You have here your F1, F2, and F3. Given din yung angles theta 1, theta 2, and theta 3. Para po makuha ang resultant nito, ang gagawin natin tong dalawang forces lang. Paano nyo magiging dalawang forces lang yan? Pagsasama-samahin natin yung components ng tatlong forces along X at along Y axis. Again, kunin lahat ng X components nitong tatlo, pagsama-samahin, and that one, we will call that your Rx. Okay? Your Rx is your summation forces along X. So, kunin ang X component ni F1, kunin ang X component ni F2, kunin ang X component ni F3, pagsama-samahin, that will be your Rx. Nakuha po? Eh, paano naman yung si Ry? Si Ry, kunin ang Y component ni F1, kunin ang Y component ni F2, at kunin ang Y component ni F3, pagsama-samahin, that will be your Ry. Sige, given this sample, paano natin makukuha yan? Ano bang X component ni F1? Ang X component ni F1, kapag tinignan niyan, that is to the right, tama, ang value, F1 cosine theta 1. To the right, positive. Next one, itong si F2, to the right pa din yan. Tama? So that is F2 cosine theta 2. To the right, that is also positive. Okay? While for F3, kita nyo naman si F3, ang X component niyan, ito yan, to the left. So that is F3 cosine theta 3, that is negative to the left. So, paano ko makukuha si Rx? F1 cosine theta 1 plus F2 cosine theta 2 minus F3 cosine theta 3. Nakuha po? O, what about for Ry? For Ry, upwards naman to. Upward component dito si F1. So, ano yan? F1 sine theta 1. Upwards, positive. Next, si F2, downwards yan. F2, sine theta 2. Downwards, negative. Then, F3, sine theta 3. That is also downwards, negative. So, pagsasama-samahin itong components na to, then makukuha nyo si Ry. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, itong tatlong to, mapapalitan ng dalawang forces lang. Isang Rx along x-axis at isang Ry along y-axis. Okay? So, in that case, burahin lang natin to. So, in that case, may matitira lang itong tatlong to, mapapalitan ng Rx along x-axis at Ry along y-axis. So, resultant ng ilan na lang to? Resultant ng dalawang forces na lang. Tama? So, pwede na tayong mag-parallelogram law. Meron tayo ditong Rx at meron tayo ditong Ry. Wait lang. Ito yung Rx ninyo. Tama? At itong isang to, this will be your Ry. Nakuha po? Then yung diagonal, that will be your resultant force. So, paano nyo mako-compute ang resultant? Eh, di ba, analyze daw as a triangle. Eh, ito 90 degrees to kasi vertical ang y-axis, horizontal ang x-axis. So, kung 90 degrees po ito, pwede tayong gumamit ng Pythagorean theorem. So, therefore, this is R is equal to what? square root ng rx squared plus ry squared. Nakuha ba? So ngayon, paano naman natin makukuha ang direction? Sabi natin, direction can be represented in terms of angle. So itong angle na yon. Tama? So let us say this is angle theta. So paano ko masosolve ngayon si angle theta? Tangent of theta, that is opposite, that is ry, over adjacent, which is your rx. Okay? So this is one way to calculate for your resultant force. Ang gagawin natin, yung lahat ng forces na ibigay, kung ilan man yan, pagsamasamahin ng x components, pagsamasamahin ang y components, then you get your resultant using Pythagorean theorem, and you get your angle using tangent theta is equal to ry over rx. Any question? May tanong pa? Are you still there, guys? None po, sir. Sige, wala daw tanong. Sige, try natin ha. Solve naman natin yung next problem. Sige, next problem po tayo. Problem number 3. Sige. For problem number 3, the magnitudes of the three forces applied to the eyeball shown are T1, which is equal to 515 newtons, T2, which is equal to 200 newtons, and T3, which is equal to 750 newtons. Replace these forces with a single equivalent force. Replace these forces with single equivalent force, R. So technically, pinapahanap po ang resultant force. Okay? O, paano natin makukompute ang resultant force nito? Let's start. Sabi natin, kapag ganyan na more than 1 or more than 2 yung forces, kunin si Rx at Ry. Okay? Sige, kunin natin si Rx, Ry given the following values. Sige, let's start with Rx. Rx is equal to what? X component po ni 750. Ano yan? Sige, tumuna pa lang 550 tayo. 550. Anong x component niyan? That is cosine 60 degrees. Tama? To the left yung value kasi ito ay upwards to the left. So to the left yung x component, so negative. Okay? Next, may x component ba itong T2? Wala po itong x component. So ibig sabihin, wala yan. Disregard. What about for T3? Pasaan ang x component ni T3? Sige, lagay natin na para malinaw sa inyo. Ito x component ni 550. Ito x component ni 750. That is to the right, positive 750. Cosine of 40 degrees. Again, to the right, positive. Okay? You can now get the value of your Rx. So therefore, calculating for your Rx, sige nga, pa-compute po ng Rx, 299.53. Ayan, nagsasolve na. That's 299.53 newtons. Okay? Oh, what about for Ry naman? For Ry, this is positive ang lumabas, ibig sabihin yung resultant nyo ay to the right. Okay? What about for Ry? Sige, Ry. This is upwards, 550. Sine of 60 degrees. Upwards, positive. 200 is also upwards, positive. Tama? Then 750, upwards, positive yan. Ano po ang vertical component? Sine 40 degrees. And that will be positive. You can now solve for the value of Ry. Sige, paki-solve po. Ilan po ang Ry? Yan, sumasagot na. Very good. That's 1158.4 newtons. So therefore, that is upwards. Okay, erase lang natin ha. Okay, so given that one, ibig sabihin, itong tatlong to, mapapalitan na nitong dalawa. Isang to the right, na Rx, which is 299.53. Ito ay upwards kasi positive ang lumabas, isang upwards na 1158.41. Okay? So calculating for your resultant, that will be square root of rx squared plus ry squared. So therefore, that is square root of 299.53 squared plus 1158.4 squared. So therefore, the resultant, ang bilis nyo 1196.5 newtons. And that will be your answer for this problem. But again, sabi ko nga sa inyo, if you will calculate for resultant forces, dapat kompleto ang tatlong properties. Magnitude, ito yon. Direction and position. Yung direction, madali yon. You can represent that in terms of an angle. So kung ito ang resultant natin na 1196.5, ito po, magsosolve natin yung angle. Let us say ito yung angle na yon. Tangent theta is Ry over Rx. So your Ry is 1158.4 divided by 299.53. So therefore, your theta is 75.5 degrees. Ibig sabihin, itong isang to ay 75.5 degrees. Okay? Any question? Pa-check po ng value ng theta. Kung tama bang 75.5? Wait lang. Far from my calculator. Tama, sir. Okay, so therefore, that's 75.5. Okay? Kasi medyo mahaba, di ba? Kasi solve ka pa Rx, Ry, tapos solve ka pa resultant, tapos yung theta, ibang solution pa yung theta mo. So ngayon, tuturuan ko kayo ng way kung paano masosolve to nang ginagamit ang calculators ninyo. Calculator lang ang gagamitin natin. Sige, try natin ha. Pero I do not suggest na you will rely on this solution. You need to know yung basic principle natin. Okay? In case malimutan yung calculator. Okay? Sige, try natin. Alternate solution using your calculators. So, ganito ang gagawin natin. Kukumpitin natin ang resultant. You have to use mode complex. Sige, pakita ko sa inyo dito. Mode, press 2, for complex. Okay? Ngayon, anong itatype nyo dyan? Iisa-isahin natin itong mga forces na to. Okay? Such that, yung resultant natin, una, you type 550. 550. Okay? Then, may ilalagay tayo na angle dyan. Okay? So, para magkaroon tayo ng angle sign dyan, you press shift here, shift. Tapos ito, itong negative sign na to, lalabas yung sign ng angle dito. Okay? Ngayon, anong angle ang gagamitin natin? Anong sabi ko kanina? Dapat, kapag maglalagay kayo ng angle, isa lang ang reference line ninyo. Okay? Ano magiging reference line natin? Laging positive x-axis. Okay? So, laging positive x-axis ang gagamitin natin. Ito ang positive x. So, kailangan ko itong angle na to. Okay? O, ano yung angle na yan? That's 180 yung buo. Kaso may natirang 60 dito. So, 180 minus 60, ang angle ni 550 ay 120 degrees. So, that is angle 120. Okay? So, lagay natin. That's 550, angle 120. Since resultant lang ang kailangan natin, ang gagawin lang natin dito, plus. Okay? Sunod natin, 200 naman. 200. 200. So, therefore, that's 200. Shift. Ulit. O, anong angle? Isa lang ang reference line. Dapat mula positive x. Ito, hanggang dito kay 200. Ilang degrees yan? That's 90 degrees. So, therefore, positive 90. Then, plus 750. Yung last one natin, 750. Shift angle. Ano po ang angle ni 750 mula positive x? That is 40 degrees. Sorry, 40 lang. Okay? You press equals. Pag tinignan nyo po yan, ito po ang lalabas na sagot. Okay, so anong nire-represent ng mga sagot na yan? Ang nire-represent po niyan is the value of your Rx. Ito yung Rx natin, 299.53. And yung 158.40, that is the value of your RY. Okay, so ito yung Rx natin, then ito yung RY natin. Ngayon, paano natin sir palalabasin yung resultant? Okay, sige. Pag tininan natin yan, pag inequal nyo, ito si Rx, ito si Ry. Para mapalabas po yung resultant with the corresponding angle, you have to convert that in terms of R theta. So shift, you press shift, 2. Okay, yung number 2 dyan. Then i-convert daw natin sa R angle theta. So you press 3. You press equals. Lalabas po si 1196.5 angle 75.5. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, this will be your resultant and this will be the value of your theta. Okay? So, yung theta na to, saan ba ang reference nitong mga angles na to? Lahat yan galing positive x. So, itong 75.5, ano ibig sabihin yan? Measure ka ng 75.5 degrees mula positive x, nandoon ang resultant force. So, therefore, this will be your answers. Okay? Any question? Always counterclockwise po ba yung pag-consider sa angle, sir, pag naka-complex po? Yes po, counterclockwise coming from the positive x axis. Kapag po nag-clockwise kayo, for example, ginawa nyo clockwise, gaglagyan nyo ng negative sign yung angle ninyo. Okay, lalagyan nyo ng negative sign yung angle kapag nag-clockwise kayo dito. Okay? Pwede nyo namang baliktarin basta consistent kayo. Okay? Applicable po ba siya sa lahat ng calculator? Yung 570 plus is may complex mode. Also, wait lang. Yung Canon na F789 SGA, yung latest na pwede sa board exam for CE, I assume hindi kayo lahat CE, but for CEs, yung Canon na F789 SGA, meron din pong complex mode po yun. Okay, so you don't have to worry. Okay? For other courses, I guess pwede pa rin naman sa kanila yung 570. Yun yung pinapakita kong calculator dito. Okay? Any more questions? Sige, may question pa? So, therefore, yan po yung possible or pwede nyo pong gawin to solve for your resultant forces. Okay, sir? Okay na po. Sige, try natin problem number 4. Paano pag medyo i-twist natin yung problem? Okay. Okay. Determine P and theta so that the three forces shown are equivalent to the single force R, which is equal to 85I plus 20J kilonewtons. So, pinapahanap, ano daw ang value ng P at saka ng theta such that ang resultant nito ay ito. Okay? Anong ibig sabihin kapag nakaganitong form, in the form of I, J, and K? Pwede yan madagdagan ng K kung 3D po tayo. But since 2D pa lang tayo, you just have your I and J. Pag sinabi pong 85I, ang ibig sabihin niyan, 85 is your X component ng resultant. So this is your Rx. Si 20 naman, that will be your Ry. Okay? So you have your Rx and your Ry. So, ibig sabihin, si 85 ay si Rx, si positive 20 is your Ry. So, ngayon, ang pinapahanap ay value ng P at saka ng theta. Let's start first with the manual solution. Okay, manual solution. Rx tayo. Ano po ang X component ni P? That is P cosine of theta. That is to the right, positive. Next is 40. Cosine of 60 degrees. That is to the right, positive din. Minus, this is to the left, minus 30. Okay? And that will be equal to what? Ano daw ang value ng Rx ninyo? Equal daw yan sa 85. Okay? So calculating P cosine theta, that is equal to what? 85 plus 30 minus 40 cosine 60. So calculating, you will get here 85 plus 30 minus 40 cosine 60. The answer, your P cosine theta, ay equal sa 95. Okay, pag sinolve nyo to, this is equal to 95. Kaso ilan ang unknowns nyo? Dalawa, isang P, isang theta. So ibig sabihin, this will set as your equation 1. Okay? What about for your equation 2? Saan natin kukunin equation 2? May value ka ng Ry. So let's calculate for Ry naman. For Ry, that is P sine of theta, upwards, positive. Next is 40. Downwards yan, negative. So 40, sine of 60 degrees. Downwards, negative. Equal daw siya saan? Equal siya sa Ry, which is equal to 20. Okay po? So given that one, ano po ang gagawin? Simplify lang natin to. Your P sine theta, that is equal to what? 20. Lipat to sa kabila, plus 40 sine 60. Hindi ko na to i-simplify ha, para hindi tayo mag-decimal. Ito sinimplify ko kasi saktong 95 ito. Okay? So but nevertheless, this will be your equation 2. So you now have 2 equations, 2 unknowns. So pwede na nating ma-solve si P at si theta. Okay? O, para mas madali, pag-combine na lang natin yung dalawang equations. Paano i-combine? Tingnan nyo to ha. P sine theta divided by P cosine theta. So ito, i-divide ko dito. So technically, equal yan saan? Equal po yan sa P sine theta. Ito yon. 20 plus 40 sine 60 divided by, ano ba ang P cosine theta nyo? 95. Tanong, anong common dito? P. So, pwede ko bang makancel si P? Yes. So, canceled ang P. Ano ba ang sine over cosine? Ang sine over cosine ay tangent. So, therefore, that is tangent of theta. Okay? So, tama. That's tangent of theta. So, ngayon, you can now solve for the value of theta. Okay? So, solve natin. Ang value po ng theta ay equal saan? Sige, pakisolve po. Ano po ang value ng theta? Ayan, may sumagot na. The value of your theta is 29.91 degrees. Okay? So, therefore, that is the value of your theta. Okay? So, kung may theta na kayo, masasolve nyo na yung P. Tama? Either of the two equations, pwede nyo gamitin. Okay, let us say we use equation 1. That is P cosine 29.91. That will be equal to 95. So, therefore, ano po ang value ng P? Pakisolve po ang value ng P. Hintayin natin. Ano po ang value ng P? Ay, may sumagot na. The value of your P is equal to 109.6. So therefore, that will be your answers, or those are your answers for problem number 4. Any question? Sir, pwede pa ba dyan yung caltech kanina? Kasi kanina, dire-diretso lang po, mag-a-add tayo para makuha yung resultant. Ngayon po, baliktad. Resultant na po yung binigay, pinapahanap po yung force. Ang tanong, pwede pa rin po ba dyan yung caltech? Yes, pwede pa rin dyan. Such that ganito ang gagawin natin. Okay na? Okay. Ang resultant natin, alam natin, ang Rx ay 85, ang Ry ay 20. So, kunin natin ang resultant. That is 85 squared plus 20 squared. So, your resultant force will be equal to 87.32 kilonewtons. Okay? So, ngayon, given that one, kunin din natin ang theta. Your tangent of theta is equal to what? Ry, which is 20, over Rx, which is 85. So, masasolve natin ang value ng theta. So, ano po ang value ng theta? Makukuha niyo yan, 13.24 degrees. Okay? Ngayon, baligtad. Ang binigay na ay resultant. So, yung 87.32, angle 13.24, okay? Ay equal saan? Equal sa sum nitong tatlong to. Tama? O, ano yung mga yon? P, angle mula dito sa positive x, that is angle theta. Tama? Plus 30. Itong 30 na to. Anong angle ni 30? Mula positive x-axis, ano po ang angle? That is positive 180. And for the last one, 40. Angle 300 degrees. Kasi mula positive x, ito yung i-measure natin. So therefore, that is angle 300 degrees. Okay? So, paano ko masosolve itong P angle theta? Di ito, ililipat lang natin sa kabila. So, anong gagawin? Using your calculator. Wait, hindi ko siya mag-drag. Okay. Okay, so anong gagawin natin? That is 87.32. Shift angle, 13.24. Ito, nilipat ko na sa kabila. So, minus. Ano yun? 30. Angle 180. Tama? Then ito, lipat sa kabila, minus 40, angle 300. Equals. Okay? So ito, yung dalawang components ni P. But since kailangan natin P and angle, so you press shift, complex, convert natin sa R angle, theta. So therefore, you press equals, you will get 109.59, which is the value of your P, and your angle is 29.91. So therefore, you get the value of P and theta. Okay? So therefore, those are your answers for problem number 4. Any question? May tanong po? Baka may magtanong, sir, dun po sa angle na to, yung 300, pwede po bang gamitin na lang namin negative 60? Yes, pwede pong negative 60 ang gamitin. Kasi kung pag ganito ang ikot mo, pwede ito rin naman i-consider mo angle. You just have to use ito. You just have to use this one. Pwede mong palitan ng negative 60. You will arrive on the same answer. Okay? Any question? Going once, twice, thrice. Ayun, question. None, sir. Okay, so walang question. So let's now try to proceed. Dun sa resultant naman, paano naman kapag non-concurrent ang force system? Sige. Paano kapag non-concurrent naman? Kanina kapag concurrent, common point. May common point sila, kaya madali. Kapag non-concurrent po, wala silang common point. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, kalat-kalat lang lahat ng forces ninyo. But you don't have to worry. May slight difference lang sa pagsusolve ng resultant ito. Okay? Ano ang slight difference? Yun muna sila sa common na solution. Ano ang common solution nitong dalawa? Ang common solution, you just have to get your Rx and your Ry. Okay? So, kunin muna natin si Rx. Summation forces along X is equal to Rx. And summation forces along Y is equal to Ry. Then, same principle, you calculate for your R. R ay equals to square root of Rx squared plus Ry squared. And tangent theta is equal to Ry over Rx. Sir, ano pong pinagkaiba pa nung dalawa? Bakit pinaghiwalay pa po natin? Again, if you are solving for forces, you have to get your three properties. First one, magnitude, represented by the value of r. Second one, direction, represented by the value of theta. Eh, yung last one, ano? Position. Yung position, hindi natin sure kung nasaan. Bakit? Dito sa concurrent, alam natin yung position ni R. Bakit alam natin yung position ni R? Kasi meron siyang common point. Ibig sabihin, kung nasaan ang common point nyo, nandoon ang resultant. Eh kaso, dito sa non-concurrent, hindi natin alam kung nasaan ang common point. Kasi technically, wala siyang common point. Okay? So ang tanong, nasaan ang resultant force natin? Saan natin ilalagay ang resultant? Hindi natin alam. So ang gagawin natin, i-locate natin ang resultant in reference to a certain point. Okay? So i-locate natin yung resultant in reference to what? To our origin. Okay? So nasaan ang resultant force in reference to our origin? So yun yung tanong na kailangan nating sagutin para mailagay natin ang position ng resultant force. Okay? So paano natin gagawin yon? Let's say this is your resultant force. That is your resultant force, R. Kailangan daw natin mahanap asaan ang resultant with respect sa origin. So ang gagawin natin, kukunin natin yung distance ng line of action ng resultant sa origin. Okay? At pag sinabi pong distance ang kailangan natin ay shortest distance. At pag sinabing shortest distance, dapat po ito ay perpendicular. So to represent position, we have to calculate for the value of D. Okay? So paano natin mako-compute si D? Tatandaan yung principle. Makinig ha. Ang principle dyan, ang moment ng lahat ng forces sa origin ay equal sa moment ng resultant sa origin. Again, ang moment ng lahat ng forces sa origin ay equal sa moment ng resultant sa origin. So anong gagawin natin? Ang gagawin natin, imo-moment natin itong mga to sa origin. Yun yung summation moment about the origin. Then equate natin siya sa moment ng resultant, which is R times D. Okay? So in this manner, kapag nakuha na natin yung moment ng lahat ng forces, equate natin sa R times D, masasolve ko na ang value ng D. Okay? And this will represent the position of your resultant force. Okay? Any question? Sir, hindi po namin maintindihan masyado. Kasi hindi ko po talaga namin ma-visualize kung paano siya gagawin. So, sige, para mas maintindihan natin yung gagawin ninyo, try natin i-apply yan sa problem number 5. Sige, for now, question mo na. Problem number 5 tayo. Sige. Walang question. Sige, problem number 5. For problem number 5, from the given set of forces shown, which of the following gives? Given this one, di ba? This one is non-concurrent. Kasi anong keyword natin for non-concurrent? Kalat-kalat lang yung forces ninyo. Walang common point, hindi rin parallel. Okay? So given the following forces, determine the magnitude of the resultant force of the system. Next, the angle that the resultant force makes with the horizontal measured counterclockwise. Next, the distance of the line of action of the resultant force from the origin. And the last one, the distance from the origin where the resultant intersects the x-axis. Okay. Let's now try to solve this one. Nevertheless, concurrent man or non-concurrent, you will always start with Rx and Ry. Okay, so start tayo with Rx and Ry. Let's start with Rx first. You have here 40 to the right, positive. Then itong isang to, meron siyang horizontal component na to the left. Ano yung horizontal component? 60 cosine 45. So meron tayo ditong minus 60 cosine 45. Ito, walang horizontal component. Itong 80, merong horizontal component to the right, which is what? 80 cosine 30 degrees. Okay? So therefore, meron ka ditong plus 80 cosine 30. Oh, listen. This one is not a force. Hindi to force, ha? Kita nyo ang unit. Newton meter. Ito po ay isang moment. That is one way to represent a couple. So, couple po yan. So, paano ko malalaman ang direction nito? Mamaya natin i-discuss kung paano nyo malalaman direction yan. But for now, gusto ko lang sabihin, hindi to kasama sa summation forces along X and Y. Okay? Kasi moment po ito. Sige, pakisolve. Ilan po ang value ng Rx? Ilan po ang value ng Rx? Paki-compute po sa calculators. Ayan, may nag-solve. That is 66.86 newtons. Thank you. So therefore, the answer for Rx, that is positive 66.86 newtons. Okay, so therefore, that is positive. So therefore, to the right. Oh, what about for Ry? For Ry, wala si 40. Pero meron si 60. That is upwards. 60 sine 45. So positive 60 sine 45. Plus 50. Kasi upwards si 50. Then 80, vertical component is also upwards. Ang magnitude, 80 sine 30 degrees. So plus, kasi upwards, 80 sine 30. Sige, pakisolve po. Ilan po ang value ng Ry? Ayan, maraming sumasagot. Very good, guys. So the answer is 132.43 newtons. Okay? Positive po ang lumabas. So ibig sabihin, upwards. Ngayon, paano natin ngayon ilalagay yung mga resultat na yan? Okay? So ngayon, i-drawing natin yung X and Y axis. You have your X, you have your Y axis. So drawing natin dito, this is your X axis, this is your Y axis. So this is your origin. Okay? Since majority of your forces ay nandito, so more likely, ang resultant nyo andito sa side na to. Tama? Ang tanong ko sa inyo, ano ang direction ng resultant? Based sa dalawang to, ito ay upwards, ito ay to the right. So ang resultant, alam natin, ang direction niyan ay upwards to the right. So let us say, this is upwards to the right. That is your resultant. Okay? So yan, tama. That's upwards to the right. Ngayon, given that one, anong components? Meron kang components na ano? 66.86 newtons to the right at meron kang upward component na 132.43. By parallelogram law, you can use Pythagorean theorem. Your R ay square root ng Rx squared plus Ry squared. So square root ng 66.86 squared plus 132.43 squared. So ano po ang value ng R? Yan, buti may mga active. The resultant is 148.35 newtons. So therefore, that will be your resultant force and that is your answer for the first question. And what about for the second question? For the second question, ang pinapahanap is the angle that the resultant force makes with the horizontal measured counterclockwise. So, pinapahanap angle daw ng resultant measured counterclockwise. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, itong angle na to ang pinapahanap. Okay? So, let us say that is angle theta. Ito, copy mo lang dito sa kabila. Tama ba? By parallelogram law. So, therefore, that's 132.43. Using your SOHCAHTOA, tangent of theta is opposite 132.43 divided by 66.86. What is your angle? That is 63.21 degrees. So therefore, that is your answer for question number 2. Nakuha po? So therefore, those are your answers for the first 2 questions. So madali lang kasi kukunin nyo lang technically ang resulta. Okay? But the challenge starts with question number 3. Ano sa number 3? Pinapahanap po the distance of the line of action of the resultant force from the origin. So pinapahanap yung distance daw ng line of action ng resultant force sa origin. So technically, ang pinapahanap sa inyo ay itong distance na to. Let us say that is distance D. Again, ano ang principle? Ang principle po, ang moment ng lahat ng forces na to sa origin ay equal sa moment ng resultant sa origin. So anong gagawin muna natin? Ang gagawin muna natin, kunin muna natin ang moment ng lahat ng forces na to sa origin. Okay? So kunin natin ang moment niyan. Let us say that is R. Okay, so moment at the origin. Moment ng lahat ng forces sa origin. Unahin ko si 40. Dadaan yan sa origin. Sabihin, walang moment. Okay? But before that pala, may sign convention pala tayo dito. Yung iba sa inyo magdi-disagree sa akin, pero okay lang. Ang gagamitin kong sign convention sa solution ko, clockwise, positive. Counterclockwise, negative. Sir, hindi po ganyan sa amin. Sa amin po, counterclockwise ang positive, clockwise ang negative. Okay lang. Walang problema. As long as consistent kayo sa sign convention ninyo. Okay? Walang problema po kung magkabaliktad man ang sign convention nyo. Basta all throughout your solution, yun ang gagamitin nyo na sign convention. Okay? But for this one, ang ginamit ko po, clockwise, positive. Counterclockwise, negative. Pinakamadaling way para malaman kung clockwise, kapag parehas po sa takbo ng orasan, positive. Kapag opposite sa takbo ng orasan, negative. Okay? So again, 40. Dumadaan sa origin, ibig sabihin, walang moment. Next, 60 sine 45. That is clockwise, positive. Para sa takbo ng orasan. Ano po ang distance sa origin? 7. Okay? Next, 60 cosine 45. That is counterclockwise, negative. Ano po ang distance sa origin? Ito yung distance na yon, that is 4. Next is 50 clockwise, positive. Ano po ang distance? Itong distance na to, which is 5. Next is 80. Dumadaan sa origin, so walang moment. Okay? So ngayon, ang problema nyo na lang ay itong couple na to na 140. Paano nyo malalaman ang direction niyan? Gagawin nyo, sundan nyo lang yung arrow. Pag sinundan nyo yung arrow, pupunta dito, tapos pupunta doon. So, ibig sabihin, pag ganitong ikot niyan. Tama ba? O, ano yan? Clockwise, counterclockwise. That is counterclockwise moment. So, meron kang counterclockwise moment na 140. So, therefore, that is minus 140. So, tama po, counterclockwise ito. Okay? So, given that one, you can now solve for the moment as the origin. Ano po ang moment sa origin? Ayun, may sumagot na. 237.28. So, ibig sabihin, that is positive. Ibig sabihin, ang resultant moment nyo ay clockwise. Okay? So, 237.28. Yan yung moment sa origin. Anong sabi natin? Ang moment ng lahat ng forces sa origin ay equal sa moment ng resultant sa origin. Ano ba ang moment ng resultant sa origin? That is R times D. So therefore, this is equal to R times D. Okay po? Ano ba ang value ng R? Nasolve nyo na yan, 148.35 multiplied by the value of D. You can now solve for the value of D. Ano po ang value ng D? Sige, tayo natin. Ano po ang value ng D? Ano pong value ng D? That's 1.6. Okay, so therefore, the answer is 1.6 meters. So therefore, that is your answer for your distance D. That's your answer for number 3. I hope malinaw ha, basta tatandaan ng principle lagi. Tandaan, ang moment ng lahat ng forces sa origin ay equal sa moment ng resultant sa origin. Actually, at any point. Okay? For example, dito nyo naisipang mag-moment. Ang moment ng lahat ng forces sa point na to ay equal sa moment ng resultant sa same point na yan. Okay? But nevertheless, madalas namang ginagawang reference ay origin. Okay? What about for question number 4? Sige, balikan lang natin si question number 4. The distance from the origin where the resultant intersects the x-axis. So, pinapahanap, distance daw from the origin kung saan nag-intersect ang resultant sa x-axis. O sige, balikan natin yung problem. Saan ba nag-intersect yung resultant? Sa x-axis. Tama bang sa point na to? Yes, sir. Yan po yung point kung saan siya nag-intersect sa x-axis. Okay? So, given that one, ibig sabihin, pinapahanap yung distance nito sa origin. Let us say that is distance x. Paano nyo masasolve yan? Tama bang ito ay isang right triangle? Yes, right triangle yan. Tama? Alin ang hypotenuse? Ang hypotenuse ay yung opposite ng 90 degrees. So, ibig sabihin ito, ang hypotenuse. Your hypotenuse is x. Ito yung theta. Meron ka ng distance d, di ba? Ang d ay opposite ni theta. Meron kang hypotenuse na x na hinahanap. So, anong function? Sine of theta is opposite, which is d, divided by x. Okay? So therefore, that is sine of 63.21 degrees. That is opposite, which is d, na 1.6 divided by your x. So therefore, you can now solve for the value of x. Sige po, pakisolve po ilan po ang value ng x. Ayun, yung mga sumagot na. Bilis. The answer is 1.79 meters. So therefore, that is your answer for the distance x. Sir, wala po bang ibang solution? Kasi paano, sir, kung mali kami dun sa 1.6, di na mali din kami sa x. Ito ay isa pang alternate solution. Anong sabi natin? Ang moment ng lahat ng forces sa origin ay 237.28. Equal dapat yan sa moment ng resultant. Di ba yung resultant siya nitong dalawang forces na to? So, ibig sabihin, kung ano man ang moment ng resultant na to sa origin, yun din ang moment ng dalawang components na to sa origin. So, ibig sabihin, kung imo-moment ko tong 132.43 at 66.86 sa origin, equal din siya sa 237.28. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, moment natin. Ito, dadaan siya sa origin, so walang moment. So, ano yung may moment? 132.43 clockwise positive. multiplied by your distance, x. So solving for the value of x, you will have the same value, which is 1.79 meters. Okay? Any question? May tanong po? Going once, twice, thrice. I hope malinaw ha? Okay, basta tatandaan yung principle. Ang moment ng lahat ng forces sa isang point ay equal sa moment ng resultant sa same point. Okay po? Sige. May tanong ba? Okay, time check. It's 2:41. At 3 p.m., we'll have a 15-minute break. Break tayo ng 3 p.m. Tapos, balik tayo ng 3:15. Then, i-continue natin yung lecture. So, we still have 19 minutes. Sige. Try natin i-discuss yung next topic. Next topic naman, discuss natin equilibrium of force systems. Okay? Kanina, nagsosolve lang tayo ng resultant. Hindi pa tayo nagsosolve ng equilibrium. Okay? Ano ba pag sinabing equilibrium? Equilibrium is the term to designate where the resultant force is zero. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, pag sinabi pong equilibrium, ang resultant force mo daw ay zero. So, ibig sabihin, dapat pag nag-summation forces along x ka, dapat equal sa zero. At kapag nag-summation forces along y ka, dapat equal sa zero. Sir, paano po namin malalaman ng isang body ay under equilibrium? Tanong, ang resultant mo ay zero. So, technically, wala ng force ang nag-a-act sa body mo kasi ang resultant mo ay zero. So, ibig sabihin, kapag equilibrium, malalaman yung equilibrium yan kapag ang object mo ay, sige, starts with letter S. Sige nga. Paano ko malalaman na equilibrium ang isang body? Starts with letter S. Paki-answer po sa Q&A. Kapag ang object mo ay very good, dapat static. Okay? Malalaman mong equilibrium ang isang system kapag yan ay static. Kasi technically, wala nang force ang nag-a-act. So, wala nang magpapagalaw sa object ninyo. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, equilibrium yan kapag ang object ay static. Okay? Okay. Pag sinabi ring static, anong ibig sabihin yan? Pag sinabi pong static, hindi gumagalaw. So, ibig sabihin, your object is at rest. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, we will apply the principle of equilibrium kapag nakita nyo sa problem sinabi at rest, static, or under equilibrium, automatically you will use summation forces ay equal sa zero. Okay po? Okay, so ngayon, given that one, anong gagawin natin para makapag-analyze tayo ng equilibrium? Para makapag-analyze ng equilibrium, we will draw, of course. Sige, anong i-drawing? Sige nga, Q&A. Anong i-drawing natin para makapag-analyze tayo ng equilibrium? You will draw your FBD. Tama, your free body diagram. So, galing nyo pala students from USLT. Okay, puti active kayo sa Q&A. Sige. You will now draw your free body diagram. Okay? This is defined as an isolated view of a body which shows only the external forces exerted on the body. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, technically, papalabasin nyo lang lahat ng forces. Okay? Sir, paano namin malalaman kung anong forces ang ilalagay? Hindi, syempre, depende yan sa type of support na gagamitin ninyo. Okay? So, depende sa type of support. Let us say, these are the different types of supports at yung different forces na ilalagay ninyo. Okay? So, isa-isahin natin yan. Yan. Okay. For the first type of support, you have rollers, rocker, and frictionless surface. Ito tatandaan nyo. Kapag may dalawang objects na magkadikit, automatically, dalawa ang forces ninyo. For example, itong left hand ko at right hand ko, pinagdikit ko, may dalawang forces na dyan. Ano yung dalawang forces na yon? Normal force at friction. Okay? Meron kang normal force at friction. But tatandaan, kapag rollers at rocker, that is considered frictionless. Kaya po ang matitira lang dito ay normal forces. So these are your reactions kapag rollers and rocker. Same with frictionless surface, dalawang forces, normal force at friction, frictionless nga daw. So ang matitira na lang dito is your normal force. Okay? So tatandaan kapag ganitong mga type of support, ibig sabihin, isa lang ang force ninyo. At yung force na yon ay perpendicular to your surface. Pag sinabing perpendicular, ibig sabihin ito ay 90 degrees. Okay? Sir, paano po pag naka-incline? Pag naka-incline yan, kuwari, ito yung roller mo, naka-incline yan. Ibig sabihin dapat perpendicular pa rin sa surface. Okay? So tatandaan ha, isa lang ang force perpendicular to your surface. Okay? Next one, what about for short cable and short link? Let's start with cable. Again, pag po may cable, ang una nyong gagawin is to cut the cable. Kapag kinat niyan, anong lalabas? Tensile force. Again, hindi po kayang mag-carry ng compressive force ng cable. Lagi pong tensile. So, ibig sabihin, meron tayo ditong friction. Meron tayo ditong force. Okay? At tatandaan kapag cable, kung ano ang direction ng cable, yun din ang direction ng force. Okay? Next one, what about for short link? Paano nyo malalaman ng isang member ay isang short link? Sige, pakitake note po nito ha. Ang isang member ay isang short link kapag ang magkabilang dulo ay pin connected. Kapag pin connected dito at pin connected din sa kabila, that is considered as a short link. So, ibig sabihin kung short link, ito po yung short link natin, tandaan kapag short link, kung ano ang direction ng member, yun din ang direction ng force. So, ibig sabihin, ititrace nyo lang to and that will be the direction of your force. Okay? Next one tayo. Collar on frictionless rod. So technically, dalawang objects na magkadikit yan. Yung collar at saka yung rod ninyo. So ibig sabihin, may dalawang forces dito. Meron kang normal force at saka friction. Frictionless daw yung rod, so matatanggal na yung friction. Same with frictionless pin and slot. Yung pin ninyo, nakadikit dun sa slot. So, ibig sabihin, meron ka ditong normal force at friction din. Frictionless yung pin, so therefore, tanggal dito. Kaya makikita nyo dito, isang force na 90 degree with the line of action. Okay po? Next one, frictionless pin or hinge. Ilan ang reaction sa hinge? Sige, sagot nga, ilan po ang reaction sa hinge? Sige, sagot pa. Sagot pa. Okay. Hindi po dalawa ang reaction sa hinge. Okay, that is the most common error that we have or that we think when we were in college. Lagi sasabihin natin pag hinge, dalawa ang reaction. Pag hinge po, isa lang ang reaction. Okay? Isa lang ang reaction sa hinge such that unknown ang direction ng reaction na yon. Hindi natin alam yung direction. Kaya po, nagiging dalawa, yung dalawa ay yung components. Okay? Pero ang reaction, isa lang. Ang components, dalawa. Kasi unknown ang direction. So, meron ka ditong RY at saka RX. Okay? What about for rough surface? For rough surface, magkadikit. Tama? So, meron kang normal force at meron kang friction. But since rough yan, may friction pa rin tayo. Okay? So tatandaan na, for hinge, pag reaction ng pinahanap, yung R ang hahanapin nyo. Pero una nyong mahahanap talaga dyan ay Rx at saka Ry. So technically, ang gagawin nyo lang, kukunin nyo lang yung resultat ng dalawa. Same with this one, kukunin nyo ang resultat ng friction at ng normal force. Okay? Now, what about for your fixed support? For your fixed support, isalin lang po ang reaction dyan. Pero unknown ang direction, kaya po, dalawa ang components. But since fixed yan, meron tayong additional moment. Okay? So therefore, those are the different forces na pwede nyong ilagay sa isang free body diagram. Okay? Any question? May tanong po? Check lang natin ha. Okay, let's now try to discuss problem number 1. Okay, walang question ha. Okay, problem number 1 tayo. Problem number 1 dito sa topic na to, equilibrium of force systems. Okay. Determine the magnitude T of the tension in the supporting cable. Yes. Okay. And the magnitude of the force on the pin at A for the jib crane shown. The beam AB is a standard 0.5 meter I-beam with a mass of 95 kilograms per meter of length. Okay, so given this figure, pinapahanap is a tensile force T at saka yung magnitude ng force dito sa pin at A. Sige, draw natin free body diagram, cut natin. This is a cable, so meron tayo ditong tensile force. Next one, meron po tayo ditong pin connection at A. Isang reaction, dalawang components. Let us say you have here to the right, you have AX at meron kang upwards ni AY. Okay? You also have the weight of your beam. Nakalagay, 95 kilograms per meter of length. Binigay naman yung total length, so mako-compute natin yung weight. Let's calculate for your weight. That is 95 kilograms multiplied by your total length, which is 5. Okay? But since naka-kilograms yan, multiply natin sa 9.81 para po, excuse me, para maging newtons. Okay? This is kilogram meter per second squared. So meron ka ditong newtons. Okay? So 95 times 9.81 times 5. Pakisolve po, ilan po ang weight ng beam. That's 4,659.75 newtons. Okay? Okay? So therefore, that is the total weight of your beam. Given this is your total weight of your beam, ngayon, pinapahanap is your tensile force. Here's one tip na pwede kong ibigay sa inyo. Lagi niyong titingnan ang number of unknowns. Okay? Ilan ang number of unknowns natin? You have your T, your AX, and your AY. So meron kang tatlong number of unknowns. Kapag tatlo lang, kaya pong isolve yan. Kasi kaya ng summation forces along X, along Y, at summation moment. Okay? So ibig sabihin, kaya natin isolve to using summation, moment, summation, at summation forces. Tanong, paano ko masosolve yung T? Masosolve natin yung tensile force T kapag nawala ang AX at AY. Okay? Paano ba mawawala yung AX at saka yung AY? Mawawala lang yung dalawang yan kapag nag-moment tayo saan? Sa point A. So, summation moment about A, that will be equal to 0. Okay? So, summation moment about A, that is equal to 0. Convert ko na sa kilonewtons para mas maiksi yung ita-type natin sa calculator. Okay? Sige, let's start. That is W, which is 4.66. Clockwise, positive. Ano po ang distance yan sa A? Sabihin natin ha. Ito yung distance na yon. Paano ko makukuha yung distance na yan? Tama bang ang weight ay nasa gitna ng beam? Yes. So, ibig sabihin, itong buong to ay kalahati ng 5. So, ibig sabihin, this one is 2.5. Kaso may konting gap dito. Gano'n daw kalaki yung gap na yon? 0.12. So, therefore, that is 2.5 minus 0.12. Clockwise, positive. Tama po? Next, 10. That is clockwise, positive. O ano po ang distance? Ang distance niyan, kailangan natin makuha itong distance na to. O, paano ko makukuha yung distance na yan? That is 5 minus 1.5 minus yung gap ka dito na 0.12. Okay? I hope nasusundan. Next one, what about for t? For t, dalawa ang components niyan. Meron kang t sine 25 degrees. Yung 25 degrees galing po dito. At meron kang t cosine 25 degrees. Let's start with t sine 25. That's counterclockwise, negative. Ano po ang distance? Yung buong 5 minus yung konting awang dito, which is 0.12. Then the last one, t cosine 25. That's counterclockwise, negative. Ano po ang distance? Ang distance, itong kalahati nitong total thickness. Binigay naman yung thickness po niyan, which is 0.5. Tama? So, ibig sabihin kalahati, which is 0.25. Okay? And that will be equal to 0. So, you can now solve for the value of your tensile force. Paki-solve po, ilan po ang value ng tensile force T. Sige, ilan ang value ng tensile force T? Okay, I'll wait for you guys. Okay, so for your tensile force T, the answer is, kakaiba kayo na nako-compute. Sige. Ayan, may nakakuha. 19.61, dalawa na. Sige, check natin. The answer here is 19.61 kilonewtons. Paki-check na lang po yung pagkakapindot sa calculators. The answer is 19.61 kilonewtons. And that will be your answer for this problem. Kaso hindi pa tapos. Pinapahanap pa force on the pin at A. So para ma-solve yan, kailangan muna nating mahanap si AX at AY. Paano ko masasolve yan? Technically, you just have to use summation forces. Summation forces horizontal, that is equal to 0. You have here your AX to the right, positive. T cosine 25 is to the left, negative. But you have the value of T, which is 19.61. So minus 19.61 cosine of 25 degrees. So therefore, that is equal to 0. So the answer for AX ay ilan? Ilan po ang value ng AX? Ilan po ang value ng AX? That's 17.77 kilonewtons. Okay? What about for AY? So summation forces along Y or along the vertical is equal to 0. You have here your AY upwards positive. W is downwards negative, which is 4.66. Next is 10 downwards negative. And T sine 25 is upwards positive. So 19.61 sine 25 degrees. And that will be equal to 0. So you can now solve for the value of AY. Ilan po ang value ng AY? So for the value of your AY, you have your 6.37 kilonewtons. So therefore, that is 6.37 kilonewtons. Kaso hindi naman ito yung hinahanap sa problem. Anong hinahanap? Force on the pin at A. So, ibig sabihin, kailangan natin ay resultant nitong dalawang to. Okay? So, let us now calculate for your resultant force. That is the square root of AX squared plus AY squared. So, therefore, that is square root of 17.77 squared plus 6.37 squared. The answer is 18.88 kilonewtons. So, therefore, that is your answer for the reaction at A. Right? You have to be careful ha, kasi yung iba sa inyo, pag na-excite, minsan na nako-consider lang yung AY. Nakakalimutan na lagi yung AX. Okay? But you have to remember, kapag force po sa pin or reaction sa pin, you have to get the resultant reaction. Okay? Any question? May tanong po? Okay. So therefore, that is for your problem number 1. Okay, so time check, it's 3 p.m. So I guess medyo sakit-sakit na yung mga ano natin dyan. So stretch muna tayo. So we'll have a quick break. So we'll have a 15-minute break. So time check is 3:01. So please be back at around 3:15 for the continuation of our lecture. Okay lang ba? Sige, CR break muna po tayo. CR break, yung mga nagugutom, kuha ng pagkain. So be back at 3:15.
Recording stopped.
And we are back. Okay, so tuloy natin yung discussion. So, dire-diretso na to until 5 p.m. So, sana hindi naman tayo until 5 p.m. Okay.
Recording in progress.
Ayan, record na. Okay, sige, let's start with problem number 2. This is just a continuation yung discussion natin kanina for equilibrium of force systems. Okay, so let's start with problem number 2. Okay, for problem number 2, wait lang ah. Okay, a uniform 80-meter pipe that weighs 960 kilonewtons is supported entirely by a parabolic cable AB of negligible weight. You determine the maximum tension, minimum tension, and the tension at point D. Okay, so technically, you are given a parabolic cable. Okay, ano ba pag sinabi nating parabolic ang isang cable? You have to remember by basic principle, pag sinabi po nating parabolic ang cable, pag sinabing parabolic, the loading is distributed uniformly along the horizontal. So, ibig sabihin, yung loading natin, sinasabi dito, a uniform 80-meter pipe that weighs 960 kilonewtons, yung 960 kilonewtons divided by 80. So, magiging uniformly distributed load yon. Tama? Again, 960 kilonewtons divided by 80, yun yung magiging uniformly distributed load, yun po ay nakadistribute sa horizontal. So, ibig sabihin, kapag dinrawing po natin yan, your W is 960 divided by 80, that is 12 kilonewtons per meter. So, pag nilagay ko yan dito sa figure, that will be a uniformly distributed load along the horizontal. Okay? So, therefore, that is 12 kilonewtons per meter. Okay? So, ngayon, given that one, anong gagawin natin dito? There are several steps para makapag-analyze tayo ng parabolic cable. Okay? Pero ito naman, mga basic principles din lang to ng equilibrium. So, you just have to remember yung mga important steps na kailangan natin sundin. Okay? So, first step natin is to locate your lowest point. Okay? So, kailangan daw nating malaman nasaan ang pinakamababang point ng cable. Okay? Let us say your lowest point is at point O. So, ito yung lowest point natin. Okay? Let's say that is your point O. O stands for origin. Okay? So, ibig sabihin yung origin natin, ilalagay natin dito sa lowest point. Eh, ano ba pag sinabi nating origin? Pag sinabi po natin origin, that is the intersection of what? Of your X and your Y axis. Okay? So, intersection siya ng X and Y axis. So, technically, yung lowest point natin, that will serve as your origin. Okay? So, given this one, ano po ang gagawin natin? Gagawin natin dito, kailangan nating malocate itong origin. Pag sinabi nating location niyan, ibig sabihin location vertically at horizontally. Vertically, wala tayong problema. Bakit? Alam natin na ang lowest point ay 20 meters below point A or 7.2 meters below point B. Eh kaso, horizontally, hindi natin alam yung distance. Hindi natin alam yung distance nito sa point A horizontally. Hindi rin natin alam yung distance ni O sa point B horizontally. But alam natin na yung total length dito ay 80 meters. So, paano natin malolocate yan? Malolocate natin yan. We will set this one as point X. Okay? Or length X. Ito ay set natin as X. O, tanong, kung ito ay X, ilan tong kabila? Sige nga, paki-answer po sa chat. Ano po ang measurement ng kabila? Kung ito ay X, ano to? The other side is 80 minus X. Okay, very good. This one is 80 minus X. Okay? So our goal here is to calculate for the value of X. Tama? Kasi once masolve ko yung X, masasolve ko yung 80 minus X. So paano natin masasolve yan? Eh, tanong, ano daw shape ng cable? This is a parabolic cable. Okay? So, parabolic daw yan. So, ibig sabihin, para masolve po natin yung value ng X, we will use squared property of your parabola. O, kakadiscuss nyo lang ng analytic geometry kanina kay Sir Mike. Tama? O, sige. Kapag parabola, ganito ang gagawin natin. Para magamit natin ang squared property, kailangan nating mahanap yung coordinates ni A at coordinates ni B. Tanong ko sa inyo, ano ang coordinates ni O? Sige nga, ang O stands for origin. So, anong coordinates niyan? Coordinates niyan ay 0, 0. So, tama, ito ay 0, 0. Ang tanong, kapag ang x-coordinate muna tayo ha, kapag ang point ay nasa left ng origin, ano ang x-coordinate mo? Positive or negative? Negative. So tama. Negative ang kapag nasa left side ng origin. Ibig sabihin, anong x-coordinate ni A? That is negative x. Tama. Negative x ang x-coordinate. Ang y-coordinate tumaas, positive 20. So, negative x, that is negative x, positive 20. Tama, that's negative x, positive 20. Ano naman sa kabila? Nasa right side na to. So, anong x-coordinate dito? Positive. So, positive 80 minus x. Then, tumaas ka, positive 7.2. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, itong dalawang coordinates na to ang gagamitin natin for the squared property of your parabola. So, anong gagawin nyo lang? Parang ratio and proportion lang. So, negative x is to 20. That will be equal to 80 minus x is to 7.2. But, you have to remember squared property. O, tanong ko sa inyo, sa parabola, ilan ang nakasquare? Isa lang or dalawa? Ano ang nakasquare sa parabola? X or y or x and y? Ano ang nakasquare sa parabola? Isa lang ba? It's either x or y? Or parehas nakasquare si x and y? May isa lang. Tama? May isang nakasquare dyan. Either x or si y ang nakasquare. Kaso yung parabola natin, parabola open square. Opens upward. So, ibig sabihin kung yung parabola ay nag-open upward, ibig sabihin, alin ang square? Kakadiscuss nyo lang kanina ng analytic geometry. Alin ang naka-square kapag naka-open upward? X or Y? Naka-square po ang X. So, tama na naka-square ang X, kaya po yung mga X coordinates dito is square natin. Okay? Square ito, then ito, square nyo din. Okay? So, in this case, you can now solve for the value of your x. Sige nga po, pakisolve po ng dalawang values ng x. Dalawang values ng x po ang lalabas dito. Sige, para makita nyo kung paano palalabasin parehas using shift solve. Sorry. Mode 1. Okay. So, therefore, we have here negative alpha x squared over 20. That will be equal to, sorry. Oh my God, sorry. Ulit. That is negative alpha x squared over 20. That will be equal to 80 minus x. That's 80 minus x squared over 7.2. Kapag nag-shift solve kayo, naka-initialize ang value sa 0, you press equals. Lalabas yung isang value, 50. Kaso since naka-square to, dalawa ang values dyan. So ang tanong, paano nyo palalabasin yung other value using shift solve pa din? Sige, so gawin nyo ulit. Shift solve ulit tayo. Pero babaguhin nyo na yung initial value nyo. Okay, so ilayo nyo. For example, gawin kong 200. Press equals. So, 200 yung isang value. Okay, nagkataon lang yan ha. Pagpalagyan natin, sige, 150. Lalabas yung isang value na 200. Pero kapag sinif-solve ko ulit yan, ginawa ko ulit 0, lalabas yung isang value na 50. Bakit ganon? Kasi yung 50, mas malapit sa 0. Kaya kapag 0 ang initial value nyo, 50 yung lalabas. Okay? So, but nevertheless, dalawa ang values. Isang 200 at isang 50. Okay? Eh, tanong, alin ang tatanggapin ko sa dalawa? Isa lang ang pwedeng tanggapin dyan. Hindi ko pwedeng tanggapin yung 200 meters. Bakit? Kasi yung total length ng pipe ninyo ay 80 meters lang. Eh, sobra na to. So, technically, hindi napasok yung x nyo dito. So, ibig sabihin, ang value ng x natin ay 50 meters. So, yung 50 ang kukunin nating value. Okay? So, you are now able to locate the lowest point of your parabolic cable. Okay? Any question muna? So, tama, 50. Baka lang may nakakuha ng 200. Ibig sabihin nun, hindi nyo pwedeng tanggapin to kasi again, hindi siya pasok sa 80 meters. Okay? So ngayon, given that one, meron na tayong location ng lowest point. So anong gagawin na natin pag na-locate ang lowest point? Ang gagawin na natin, ika-cut natin yung cable, then i-isolate natin yung isang side. Pwede nyo i-isolate left side, pwede namang right side. It's up to you kung alin ang gusto nyo. But for our solution, ang in-isolate po natin dito is the left side. Okay? Isolate natin. First one, meron tayo ditong uniformly distributed load. Hindi naman magbabago ang magnitude niyan. Iiksi lang siya. Pero yung magnitude na 12 kilonewtons per meter, parehas lang. Mixing nga lang. Tama? Kasi, tapos dito, meron ka ditong tensile force at A. Bakit tensile force? Kasi, cable. Next one, meron siyang dalawang components. Meron ka po ditong AX at meron ka ditong AY. Next one, tama bang ito yung lowest point natin? Yes. Tatandaan, sa lowest point, laging horizontal ang tensile force. So horizontal ang tensile force natin dito. Let us say that is the value of TO. Okay? So, paano natin ito masasolve? Ilagay natin yung dimensions. Nakuha na natin to. Ito yung value ng x. So, therefore, that is 50 meters. Okay? Next one, nakuha na natin. Kunin natin yung resultant nito. Ano po ang resultant nito? That is 12 times 50. Tama? So, therefore, that is 12 times 50. Therefore, that is equal to 600 kilonewtons. Okay? Ay ano ba mga pinapahanap sa problem? Sige, balikan natin. Ano ba mga pinapahanap sa problem? Pinapahanap po maximum tension, minimum tension, at the tension sa point B. O, sige. So technically, hahanap tayo ng tensile forces. So kunin natin yung tensile force sa point O muna. O, paano ko makukuha si TO? Para makuha natin si TO, we take moment about A. Kasi kailangan mawala itong AX at saka itong AY. Tama? So, ibig sabihin, given that one, kailangan mawala ang AX at AY. Ibig sabihin, magmo-moment tayo sa A. Okay? So, summation moment about A, that will be equal to 0. That is 600 clockwise positive. Eh, nasaan ba ang weight? Tama bang ang weight ay nasa gitna lang? Yes, nasa gitna lang po yan. So, ibig sabihin, kung 50 po ito, ang distance na ito ay kalahati ng 50, which is 25. Okay? Next is TO. TO is counterclockwise. Okay, TO is counterclockwise negative. Ang distance po ay itong vertical distance na 20. And that will be equal to 0. Can you now solve for the value of TO? Yes, pakisolve po ng value ng TO. Ilan po ang TO? Okay, ayan na. 750 po. Okay, so thank you. So the answer is 750 kilonewtons. Okay? So you now have the value of your TO. So technically, okay ka na sa TO. Kailangan mo naman ngayon ay TA. Eh paano ko ba masasolve ang TA? Sino muna dapat ang makuha ko? Makuha muna dapat natin ang AX at saka AY. Eh, paano ko masasolve yung AX at AY? Equilibrium naman to. So, anong gagawin? Sorry? Summation forces along X is equal to 0 muna. So, anong gagawin? TO is to the right, positive, which is 750, minus AX, and that will be equal to 0. So, therefore, your AX is equal to 750 kilonewtons. And what about for AY? For AY, summation forces along Y is equal to 0. AY is upwards, positive, minus your W, which is 600. And that will be equal to 0. So your AY is obviously 600 kilonewtons. Hindi naman itong dalawa lang ang kailangan nyo. Kailangan nyo talaga ay yung tensile force na TA. So let's now try to solve for TA. Square root of 750 squared plus 600 squared. So square root ng AX squared plus AY squared yun. Ano po ang value ng TA? TA, 960.47 kilonewtons. So therefore, that's 960.47 kilonewtons. So hindi pa natin alam alin dyan ang maximum, alin ang minimum, alin ang tension sa B. Hindi pa natin sure. Kailangan pa natin i-compare lahat ng tensile forces. Ang tanong, itong dalawa lang ba ang tensile forces? Hindi. Kasi pag binalikan mo yung buong figure, balikan natin yung buong figure. Pag binalikan natin, meron pa tayong point B. So, ibig sabihin, kailangan ko pang makuha yung tensile force kay point B. Okay? Yung bang kay A, nakuha na natin? Yes. But before that, meron tayo ditong uniformly distributed load, 12 kilonewtons per meter. Yung reaction sa A, nakuha na natin. Meron kang AX na 750 kilonewtons. Meron kang AY na 600 kilonewtons. Ang tanong, makukuha ko na rin ba yung components sa B? Yes. Kasi meron ka ditong tensile force kay B na may components BY at saka BX. Pag kinuha ko resultant nito, makukuha ko ang tensile force kay B. Nasundan po? Okay, so ngayon, given that one, paano ko masosolve si BX at si BY? Summation forces. So, summation forces along X, that is equal to 0. Meron kang BX to the right, positive, minus 750. So, therefore, that is equal to 0. So, therefore, your BX is equal to 750 kilonewtons. Okay? What about for BY? Makukuha ba natin si BY? Yes. Summation forces along Y is equal to 0. 600 is upwards, positive. Paano naman yung 12? Kailangan resultant. So, 12 kilonewtons per meter downwards, negative. Saan ko i-multiply? Sa total length, which is 80. Then BY is upwards, positive. So, therefore, that is equal to 0. So, therefore, your BY is equal to what? Pakisolve po, ilan po ang value ng BY? The value of your BY is equal to 360 kilonewtons. So therefore, that is 360. Can we now solve for the reaction at B? Yes, that is a tensile force at B, which is equal to the square root of BX squared plus BY squared. So equal siya kay square root ng 750 squared plus 360 squared. Sige nga po, pakisolve ilan po ang tensile force kay point B. 831.93 kilonewtons. Okay? So therefore, that is the tensile force at B. So ngayon, kompleto na natin yung tatlong tensile forces.
Meron kang klase? Sa review.
Meron po atang naka-on yung mic. Sorry. Okay, balikan natin yung questions. Nakalagay po dyan, maximum tension, minimum tension, at tension sa point B. So may nakuha na tayong isa. Nakuha na natin yung tension kay point B. The tension at point B is 831.93. Okay pa? Ngayon, pinapahanap maximum tension. Pag maximum tension, tandaan po, the maximum tension always occurs at the highest support. Ganyan po pag parabolic cable. Kung ano yung pinakamataas na support, yun yung may maximum tension. Alin ba ang pinakamataas na support? Si A. So, ibig sabihin, your maximum tension is a tensile force at A, which is equal to 960.47 kilonewtons. And that is your answer for number 1. Sorry. That is 1. Oops, ayun. Okay? 960.47, yun po yung nakuha natin kanina. Okay? And what about for the minimum tension? The minimum tension, of course, at the lowest point. O, tanong, nasaan ba ang lowest point? Sige nga, nasaan ang lowest point? Anong point yon? That is your point. Oh, nasa origin. So, tama. So, therefore, asan ang minimum tension? Your minimum tension is the value of your TO. Okay? So, your Tmin is your TO, which is equal to 750 kilonewtons. So, therefore, that is your answer for number 2. Okay? So, you have to remember, for parabolic cables, lagi nyong unang hahanapin ay ang lowest point. Because that will be your cutting point. Doon kayo magpuputol. Then you have to isolate either the left side of your parabolic cable or the right side of your parabolic cable. Okay? Any question? Malinaw ba yung pagkakadiscuss po nung number 2? Yes, sir. Is that specifically for parabola only? Yes po. Pag parabola po, you have to locate your lowest point. Okay? There are some instances na po na ang loading ninyo ay hindi po sa horizontal nakadistribute. There are some instances na nakadistribute sa length ng cable. Yun po ang tawag doon ay catenary cables, which I choose not to discuss kasi formula-based po kasi po lahat yun. Okay? Baka malito lang muna kayo. Okay? So, reserve na lang natin yun sa respective review classes ninyo. Okay? Yun pong about minimum at maximum. Okay. About the minimum and maximum, kaya po, technically, the general principle is the cable with the highest slope has the highest tensile force. Maximum slope, maximum tension. Yun po yung general for everything. Okay? Kahit saan nyo tingnan yan. Basta cables, kahit saan tingnan, maximum slope, maximum tension. Dito, nagkataon kasi palaging ang maximum slope ay nasa highest support. Okay? Kaya po, tandaan, for parabolic cable, ang maximum tension ay laging nasa highest support. Okay? Sir, pabalik naman po dun sa point A na slide. Sige, walang problema. Point A. Hala, asan na yung controller nito? Ayun, lumabas. Point A, which is point A. This one? Tama ba? Ayan. Sige, screenshot daw. Ano pa? Stay wiser. Okay na po. Okay, you're welcome. Okay, sige. So, tanda na, for parabolic cables, highest point or higher support, that has the maximum tension. Lowest point, that has the minimum tension. Hindi ko makita yung controller ng PowerPoint. Wait lang. Ayun, lumabas. So, technically, by principle, dapat yung value ng tensile force sa B, which is in between point O and point A, nasa pagitan siya, dapat yung value niya ay in between din yung dalawa. Okay? So that's one way to verify your answers. And that's one tip na pwede kong ibigay sa inyo. Okay? If ever you're solving problems, you always think this way. Ano ba ang ine-expect kong sagot? Then you verify your answer. For example, for this one, alam mo na dapat yung value ng dapat ang value ng TB ay in between ng dalawang to. So isipin mo, dapat yung sagot na makukuha ko dito in between ng dalawang values. So once na yung value mo ay sumobra dito or nagkulang dito, ibig sabihin may mali na sa solution mo. Okay? So always ask yourself, ano ba ang ine-expect kong sagot sa problem na to? Okay? Kasi there are problems na alam mo agad yung ine-expect mong sagot. Okay? So that's one tip na pwede kong ibigay sa inyo. Okay? Sige. Let's now proceed with the next topic. We'll now discuss trust analysis. Okay? Okay. Trust analysis po tayo. The analysis of trusts is based on the following three assumptions. So ito lagi yung tatlong bagay na kailangan yung tandaan for trust analysis. Okay? Tatlo lang naman to. Let's start with the first one. First thing that you have to remember for trust analysis, una, the weights of the members are negligible. So wala po tayong i-consider na kahit anong self-weight. So for example, wait lang. Pen. Okay. So for example, meron tayong trust. Simple na trust. Yan. Let's say this simple trust. Wala tayong i-consider na kahit anong self-weight ng mga members kapag trust analysis. Laging tatandaan that the forces are applied at the joints. So kung saan yung joints ninyo, dun lang pwedeng i-apply ang forces ninyo. That's one of the major assumptions of trust analysis. Okay, next one. For the second one, all joints are pin connected. Okay, so lahat daw ng joints natin ay dapat pin connected. So ibig sabihin kung ito yung mga joints ninyo, kung ito yung mga joints ninyo, ito. Lahat yan, pin connected. Ano po ba pag sinabing pin connected? Pag sinabi kong pin connected, kapag nag-moment ka sa point na yon, ang moment sa point na yon ay 0. So, ibig sabihin, basically, ang sinasabi lang nito, kapag sinabing ang joints ay pin connected, ibig sabihin, ang moment sa lahat ng joints ay equal sa 0. Yun lang po yung ibig sabihin nun. So, ibig sabihin, pag nag-moment kayo sa lahat ng joints dyan, dapat equal sa 0. Another one, kung lahat ng joints, sir, ay pin-connected, ibig sabihin, kapag kinuha ko po ang isang member, pin-connected yung isang dulo, okay, pin-connected yung isang dulo, pin-connected din yung kabilang dulo. Ang tanong, anong tawag natin dito? Discuss natin to kanina. Anong tawag dun sa member na magkabilang dulo ay pin-connected? Anong tawag dyan? Short link. Okay, buti natandaan. Okay, so ibig sabihin, ang members po ng isang trust ay considered short link. Okay, pasensya na ha. Kasi naka-touchpad lang po tayo. So, pahirapan ang pagsulat. Okay. So, therefore, ito pong members ng trust ay considered short link. Kaya anong ibig sabihin nun? Ibig sabihin nun, kung ano ang direction ng member ng trust, yun din ang direction ng force. Okay? Kaya di ba mapapansin nyo kapag nagta-trust analysis tayo, kung anong direction ng member, yun din ang direction ng force. Kasi nga po, magkabilang dulo ay pin-connected, so that is considered a short link. Okay? Kumbaga, ititrace nyo lang yung member, then yun na rin yung direction ng force. Nakuha pa? What about for number 3? For number 3, the applied forces act at the joints. Okay, so diniscuss na natin kanina, since wala nga tayong kino-consider na weight na members, ibig sabihin, ang forces nyo ay nasa joints. Okay? So, ang forces nyo ay naka-apply lang sa joints. Kaya po, kapag dito sa trust analysis, dalawa lang ang pwedeng maging nature ng force ninyo. Tama? Ano yung dalawang nature? Pwedeng tension, pwedeng compression. So, ibig sabihin, ang force ninyo ay pwedeng tensile force. Pag sinabing tensile force, away from the joint, at pwede rin maging compression. Pag sinabing compression, that is towards the joint. So, ang tension, palayo sa joint. Ang compression, papunta sa joint. Yun yung dalawang nature ng forces na pwede nyong makuha. Eh, sir, paano po sa simula? Hindi naman po namin alam kung tension ba yung under tension ba yung member o under compression. So, kapag ganyan na hindi nyo alam, anong gagawin? Anong madaling gawin? Pag hindi alam kung tension o compression, pinakamadaling gawin ay, sa tayo magaling, mag-assume. Okay. Magaling tayo sa assumption. So, i-assume natin. But here's one tip na pwede kong ibigay sa inyo. Okay? For trust analysis, always assume that the member is under tension. Lagi niyong i-assume na ang member ay under tension such that kapag nag-positive yung sagot ninyo, tama ang assumption na tension. Pag nag-negative, tama ang assumption. Pag nag-negative, mali ang assumption, so dapat compression. Okay? So, lagi niyong i-assume na ang member ay under tension. Pag positive ang lumabas, tama na tension yon. Pag negative, ibig sabihin dapat yung member ay under compression. Kumbaga, sa simula pa lang, standardize na natin. Kesa yung bago-bago ka ng assumption, pagdating sa dulo, hindi mo na maalala, babalikan mo pa yung unang solution mo. Tama? Eh kung sa simula pa lang, alam mo na na tension ang ina-assume mo lahat, so automatic, pag nakita mong negative, compression na yun. Okay? So that's one tip na pwede kong ibigay. Eh ano ba mga ginagamit? Ano ba mga possible na ginagamit? Or mga methods na pwedeng gamitin for trust analysis? Meron po tayong method of joints at method of section. Okay? But before that, again, pag tension, it elongates or stretches the member kasi nga away from the joint. Pag compression, sino-shorten niya yung member kasi towards the joint. So ano ba mga madalas gamitin sa board exam? For board exam, it's either you use method of joints or method of sections. So sa board exam ba, sinasabi ba kung alin ang gagamitin sa dalawa? Wala pong sasabihin sa inyo. Kayo po ang magde-decide kung alin sa dalawa ang gagamitin ninyo. Okay? So it's up to you kung alin sa dalawa ang gusto nyong gamitin. But, here's another tip. Huwag kang magme-method of joints kapag ang pinapahanap na force ay sa isang member na malayo sa support. Okay? Bakit? Kasi bago ka makarating dun sa member na yon, kung magme-method of joints ka, bago ka makarating sa member na yon, ubus na ang oras mo. Okay? So technically, pag nakita nyo, yung pinapahanap na force na member na malayo support, automatic method of sections ang gagamitin ninyo. Okay? And basically, sa board exam naman, madalas ang ginagamit ay method of sections. Okay po? Ready? Question. Before we start solving the problems. May tanong po ba before we start solving the problems? So far, wala naman atang tanong. Sige. Okay, humabol. None, sir. Okay, thank you for answering. Okay, sige. Try natin i-solve ngayon yung problem number ano ba tayo? 3. Okay, problem number 3. For problem number 3, considering the thrust below, given P1 is 10 kilonewtons and P2 is 15 kilonewtons. Given this one, first question, Before we start solving the problems, let us draw first your free body diagram. Wait lang ha, magre-reshare lang ako ha, kasi naglalag siya. Hindi sumusunod yung cursor. Try ko lang mag-reshare guys, sorry. Stop share pala, sorry. Naglalag kasi siya. Share. Ayun, okay na. Okay, given this one, draw muna natin ng free body diagram. Okay, sige, let's start. Pin-connected or hinged itong mga to, tama ba? So, ibig sabihin, tignan dalawang components. So, meron ka ditong GV, vertical component sa G. Meron kang horizontal component, GH. Same with this one, meron ka ditong AV at meron ka ditong AH. Okay pa? So, given this one, P1 is 10 kilonewtons, P2 is 15 kilonewtons. Okay? So, ibig sabihin po, kailangan nating mahanap yung munang mga reactions para ma-analyze natin itong problem. Okay. Sa board exam, meron kaming tinatawag na titig method. Okay? Yung tititigan mo lang, alam mo na yung sagot. Okay? Dito, may isang reaction na automatically equal sa 0. Sige nga, alin sa apat ang equal sa 0? GH, GV, AH, or AV? May titig method. Alin sa apat ang equal sa 0? GH, GV, AH, or AV? Sige, tingnan natin. Alin ang 0? Sige, hula lang, hula. Isa lang ha. Isa lang yung 0 dyan. Okay. Ang 0 po dyan ay yung value ng GV. Okay? GV ang 0. Bakit po magiging 0 ang GV? Tanggalin ko na ha. Sige, balik natin. By titig method. Okay. This is your joint G. Tama? Pag nag-method of joints tayo sa G, this is your joint G. Meron ka ditong, ano to? This is your GH. Next, meron ka ditong vertical na GV. Tama? Ngayon, ano yung member na nakakabit kay point G? Isa lang member ang nakakabit sa kanya, which is GB or BG. Sige, BG. Kapag kinat ko to, may lalabas dito na force. Again, just assume tension. May lalabas dito na force kay member BG. Eh, di ba sabi natin kung ano ang direction ng member, yun din ang direction ng force. Eh, ang direction ng member mo, horizontal. So, horizontal yung force. May other forces pa ba? Wala na. Eh, pag nag-method of joints tayo, ini-apply natin yung principle ng summation forces is equal to what? Equal to 0. Eh, pag tinignan nyo, summation forces vertical is equal to 0. Isa lang ang vertical force mo. So, ibig sabihin, ang GV ay 0. Okay? I hope nasundan yun, ha? Okay. So, therefore, your GV is equal to 0. So, tanggal na po ang value ng GV. Okay? So, ngayon, we can now solve for question number 1. Determine the reaction at support A. So, para makuha ko ang reaction sa support A, kailangan ko ng AH at saka AV. O, paano ko masosolve itong dalawang to? Para masolve yan, kailangan mawala itong GH. So, anong gagawin ko? Summation moment about G is equal to 0. But before that, pwede rin naman pala nating masolve agad si AV. Tama ba? Kasi siya na lang ang natitirang unknown sa vertical. So, summation forces vertical is equal to 0. Your AV is upwards, positive, minus 10, minus 15. And that will be equal to 0. So, therefore, your AV is equal to 25 kilonewtons. Okay? So, ngayon, next one tayo. Para ma-solve naman si AH. Para ma-solve si AH, moment tayo kay G. So summation moment about G, that will be equal to 0. AH is counterclockwise, sorry, ito muna, 10 is clockwise, positive. Ang distance, 2 meters. 15 is clockwise, positive. Ang distance, 6 meters. AH is counterclockwise, negative. Ang distance, 4 meters. So therefore, that is equal to 0. Pakisolve po, ilan po ang value ng AH. Ilan po ang value ng AH? Ayan, sumagot na. Your AH is 27.5. That will be positive, which means tama yung direction na to the right. So therefore, that is 27.5 kilonewtons. Are those your final answers? Hindi. Pinapahanap ay reaction. So ibig sabihin, kailangan ko yung resultant sa point A. So therefore, square root of 25 squared plus 27.5 squared. So therefore, you can now solve for the value of RA, which is equal to 37.17 kilonewtons. Okay, so therefore, that is your answer for question number 1. Okay, any question? May tanong? Okay, next one tayo. For the next one, question number 2, pinapahanap force on member AB. So, pinapahanap force kay member AB. So, ito ang kailangan natin. Tama? So, ibig sabihin, since malapit yan sa support, pwede kang mag-method of joints. Okay, let's consider joint A. Meron ka ditong AV, meron ka ditong AH. Okay? Then sabi natin, laging i-assume tensile. So ito ay tensile force, that is the force kay AB. Okay? And this one is the force kay AF. Okay? So given that one, pinapahanap is the force at AB. Okay? Force kay AB ang pinapahanap sa atin. So para ma-solve natin yung force kay AB, kailangan alam natin yung values ng mga to. Ay tama bang alam na natin si AH at AV? Yes. Your AH and AV, nakuha na natin yan sa previous question. Your AH is equal to 27.5. Your AV is equal to 25. Tama po? So next, para din makuha natin, kailangan natin makuha yung value ng angle ni AB. Kasi hindi ko makukuha ang components nito kung wala akong angle. Okay? So using or calculating force theta, ito yung angle theta natin dyan. May opposite ka na 4, may adjacent ka na 2. So tangent of theta, lagay natin para di kayo malito. This is the value of theta. Okay? So tangent of theta is opposite, which is 4, divided by adjacent, which is 2. So therefore, your theta is what? 63.43 degrees. Okay? Then 63.435 degrees. Now, given the value of theta, kaya ko na bang ma-solve si TAB? Yes. Summation forces vertical is equal to 0. O vertical component, that is AV, upwards positive. Vertical component ni TAB, that is TAB, sine 63.435. That is also upwards positive. And that is equal to 0. Eh, tanong, may value ka na ba ng AV? Yes, na-solve natin kanina, your AV is 25 plus TAB sine 63.435, and that is equal to 0. Can you now solve for the value of TAB? Yes, pakisolve po ng value ng TAB. Ano po ang value ng TAB? Ayan, sumagot na. Buti may mga masisipag tayo dito na nakapindot ng calculators. That's negative. Pakisama yung sign ha, kasi importante po ito. Negative 27.95. Okay, so negative 27.95 kilonewtons. Anong ibig sabihin ng negative? In-assume natin dito, tension, which standard naman sa atin yan, assume natin lagi tension. So, ibig sabihin kapag nag-negative, automatically, that is under compression. Okay? Yung C dito, it means compression. So, therefore, the tensile or the force at AB is equal to 27.95 kilonewtons under compression. Okay? So, therefore, that is your answer for question number 2. You have to be careful, especially during your board exam. Kasi for board exam, more likely, ang mangyayari dyan, yung 27.95 under tension, nasa choices din. Okay? So you have to be careful. Okay? So far, so good tayo.
200. 200. Bisa ba?
Ano po yun? Mga naririnig tayo dito. Okay lang yan. Sige. Okay, last question tayo dito sa problem na to. Okay, for this problem, for the last question, pinapahanap force on member CF. O CF. So gagawin mo dyan, magjo-join ka pa dito, tapos jo-join ka pa dito, lilipat-lipat ka. So instead na maglipat-lipat pa tayo ng joints, why not use method of what? Sections. Okay, method of sections tayo. Cut natin dito. Then isolate natin yung left side. Okay? So first one, meron ka dito. Meron ka dito, GH. Yung GV kanina, na-prove na natin to kanina, 0 to. Asan na yung cursor ko? Na-prove na natin to kanina, ito ay 0. So hindi na natin to ilalagay. Then meron ka ditong AV. Meron ka ditong AH. Yung P1 natin, that is equal to what? 10 kilonewtons. Ilang members ang makakat? 3. Meron kang BC. Asan yung cursor? Okay, meron kang BC, CF, at saka FE. So for BC, CF, and FE, lalabas lahat ng forces. Let's assume tension. So therefore, tensile force kay CF, meron kang force kay EF, at force kay BC. Okay, given this one, what is the best or easiest way to solve for the force kay CF? Sige nga, anong pinakamadaling way para ma-solve ang force kay CF? Summation forces along Y. Okay, huwag na kayo magmo-moment. Kasi pag nagmo-moment pa kayo, baka mamaya mali-mali pa kayong distance. Pag nag-moment ka sa B, may dalawang unknowns ka dito. Tama? Pag nag-moment ka naman sa F, maka-cancel yung hinahanap mo. Tama? Pag nag-moment sa B, dalawa unknowns. Pag kay A, dalawa pa rin unknowns. Tama? So medyo mahirap ang moment. So pinakamadali dito, summation forces vertical. That is equal to 0. This angle is 45 degrees. Paano sir nakuha yung 45 degrees? Sige, tingnan natin. Ilan to? 4 meters. Ilan to? 4 meters din. So this is a right triangle na equal yung dalawang legs, kaya po ito ay 45 degrees. Okay? So given that one, you have your AV, upwards positive, minus 10, plus upwards TCF sine 45. That is equal to 0. Eh, di ba na-solve na natin yung AV? Yes, sir. That is 25. So 25 minus 10 plus TCF sine 45. And that will be equal to 0. Pag-solve po, ilan po ang value ng TCF? 21.21 kilonewtons. Ano po ang sign? Positive or negative? Positive ba? Kasi ito ay positive 15. Pag nilipat ko, magiging negative. So, dapat negative to. Negative. Okay, so negative 21.21. Sige. Check nyo ha. That's negative 21.21 kilonewtons. Which means, automatically, since consistent tayo sa assumptions natin, negative means compression. So, therefore, that's 21.21 kilonewtons under compression. That will be your answer for problem number 6. Any question? Okay, tama. Compression pala, sir. Yes, that's under compression. Any question? May tanong po? Okay. Kung walang question, let's solve another trust problem. Pero bigyan natin ng konting challenge. Okay, let's start with problem number 4. Malapit na to. Friction na lang, then we're done. Okay, problem number 4. Using the figure below. Okay? For CEs out there, for civil engineers out there, medyo similar to sa problem na binigay ng board exam. Okay? But anyway, for problem number 4, using the figure below, first question, if P is equal to 3,000 newtons and Q is equal to 1,000 newtons, determine the force in member CD. Second question, same condition. P is 3,000 newtons and Q is 1,000 newtons. Determine the force in member JK. Okay? So, pinapahanap force kay member CD at force kay member JK. So, kapag ganyan, automatically, sir, malapit naman po sa supports. Why not use method of joints? Kapag nag-method of joints tayo, tingnan nyo ha. Obviously, you can calculate for the support reactions. Tama? Madali lang yan. Tama, support reactions, kaya nyo yan. But you can solve this problem without calculating the support reactions. Paano? Ganito gagawin natin. Hindi ko marirecommend ang method of joints. Bakit? CD ang pinapahanap. Kapag nag-joint ako sa D, katong tatlong unknowns agad yan. Tandaan, sa method of joints, sige nga, ilang equations lang ang kaya nyong gamitin. Sa method of joints, ilang equations lang? Hanggang 2 equations lang tayo. Tama? Summation forces vertical at summation forces horizontal. Kapag kinat ko to, 3 agad yung unknowns mo. Tama ba? So, ibig sabihin, hindi pwede. Tama? Same sa kabila. Sa kabila, pinapahanap yung member JK. Kapag kinat ko to, 3 din ang lalabas na unknowns. So, ibig sabihin, hindi rin pwede kasi hindi siya masasolve ng summation forces vertical and horizontal. So, technically, we will not use method of joints. So, automatically, we will use method of sections. Ang tanong ko lang is paano puputulin? Unang hahanapin nyo dyan, unang tip ko sa method of joints, or sa method of sections rather, kapag method of joints, ang una nyo hahanapin, ano ba yung pinapahanap? Pinapahanap si CD. Okay, so dapat maputol ang CD kasi dapat lumabas yung force doon. Tama po? Next one. Pinapahanap din ang JK. So, ibig sabihin, dapat maputol din ang JK. Nakuha po? So, ngayon, given that one, kung dapat maputol ang CD at ang JK, next condition na pwede nyong makuha or dapat isipin pag mag-method of sections kayo, dapat pinakamaraming unknowns na pwede nyong makuha, 3 lang. Hanggang 3 unknowns lang ang pwede. Kapag sumobra sa 3, hindi nyo yan masasolve. O sige, kapag isang diretsong cut to, ilan ang unknowns na lalabas? Sige nga, kapag isang diretso yung cut, ilan ang unknowns na lalabas? Apat. Tama? Apat na unknowns ang lalabas dyan. Meron kang force kay CD, force kay GD, force kay GK, at force kay JK. Eh di sir, hindi pwede. So, hindi nga pwede yung isang diretsyo. Pero, may isa pang way kung paano ito mapuputol such that malilimit natin sa tatlong unknowns lang ang lalabas. Paano yon? Putulin mo to. Okay? Itaas mo ngayon doon. Ibaba mo ngayon dito. Tapos, putulin mo dito. Sir, apat pa rin po yung unknowns dyan. Oo nga, apat. Ano yung mga unknowns? CD, CG, GJ, at JK. Tama. Lalabas yung force dito sa member na to, force sa member na to, force sa member na to, at sa member na to. Apat ang unknowns. But, two forces can be treated as one because they are collinear. Okay? So, ano yung dalawang forces na collinear? Yung force ko kay CG at kay GG ay collinear. So, this one or these two forces can be treated as one. Isa na lang ang count doon. So, yun na, tanda na, kapag meron sa inyo, kapag nag-cut kayo at may members na collinear, ang cut sa unknowns doon, ang count sa unknowns doon ay isa lang. So, yung CG at GG, isang unknown, yung CD, at yung JK. So, tatlo. So, ibig sabihin, ganito natin siya ikakat. Okay? I hope nasundan. Okay? So, technically, magkaiba pa rin yung forces doon. Pero, masosolve pa rin natin kasi nga, they can be treated as one kasi nga, isang diretsyong member lang sila. Pag sinabing collinear, acting on the same line. So, technically, we will cut it this way. And isolate the upper side. Okay? I hope nasundan yon. So, ano mga forces ang lalabas? Assuming tension lahat. Meron ka ditong force kay, wait lang. Force kay CD, force kay JK, force kay CG, at force kay JG. Anong pinapahanap na una? Pinapahanap po is the value of CD. O, sige nga, saan ako magmo-moment? Para ma-solve ko tong CD, kailangan mawala itong tatlong to. O, saan ako magmo-moment para makuha ko si CD? So, yan. Diba? Kita nyo agad. Moment tayo sa point J. Okay? So, summation moment about J, that will be equal to 0. First one, 1,000. That's counterclockwise, negative. Ang distance, itong total height na to, 3 meters. Another 1,000. That's counterclockwise, negative. Ang distance, 1.5. Okay? Next one. Yung 1,000 na to, wala nang moment yan. Dumadaan na yan dyan. Tama? Ito, wala na to. 3,000 naman tayo. 3,000 counterclockwise, negative. Ang distance, 2 meters. Then FCD, counterclockwise, negative. Ano po ang distance? Ang distance, 2 meters pa din. And that will be equal to 0. Pakisolve po, ilan po ang value ng FCD? Pakisama po ang sign if possible. Okay? Ayan, may sumagot na. The answer is 5,250 negative. So, negative 5,250 newtons. Ano ibig sabihin ng negative? Lagi tayo nag-assume na tension, so therefore the negative sign indicates compression. And that will be your answer for question number 1. Nakuha po? Oh, what about for question number 2? So, kung compression to, ibig sabihin, kung babaguhin natin to, dapat ito ay upwards ang force. Ay, dapat upwards yan. Okay? So, for force in member JK, for the sake of verifying our answer, Magmo-moment din tayo dito. At para ma-solve ko si JK, moment ako kay C. So summation moment about C, that is equal to 0. That is 1,000 counterclockwise negative. Distance, 3. 1,000 counterclockwise negative pa rin. Ang distance, 1.5. And FJK, itong 3,000, wala na yung moment kay C. Ang FJK, clockwise, positive. Ang distance po, 2 meters. And that will be equal to 0. Pakisolve po ang value ng FJK. Sige, anong value ng FJK gamit itong solution na to? Ano po ang value ng FJK? Your FJK is 2,250 newtons. Positive, so that is under tension. Okay? So, kung verify niyo yung sagot niyo, ilan to? This is 2,250. Tama yung direction na pababa siya. Kasi away from the joint, that's under tension. Ito towards the joint, so pataas, na equal saan? Equal sa 5,250. So technically, tama yung sagot natin. Bakit? Summation forces vertical dapat equal sa 0. Upwards, 5,250 minus 3,000 minus 2,250. Then that is equal to 0. So technically, tama po yung answers dito. Okay? So therefore, those are your answers for question numbers 1 and 2. Any question? Malinaw po? So nakita niyo yung kung paano tayo mag-cut. Laging isipin, ika-cut muna kung ano yung hinahanap. Dapat laging hanggang 3 count lang ng unknowns ang pwede. Magkakaroon ka lang ng counted as 1 kapag collinear yung numbers. Okay po? So therefore, those are your answers for this problem. Ayan. Sir, pwede pabalik po mismo sa my question. Sige. Walang problema. Screenshot ba? Sa my question daw. Ito. Don't have to worry. Makikipag-coordinate agad kami kay Dean para po maibigay po agad yung handouts niyo. Thank you, sir. Well, you're welcome. Walang problema. Okay na? Gahang siya. So we'll now proceed with our last topic. Our last topic is about friction. Okay? Sana matapos natin. 30 minutes na lang pala. Okay, let's start now with frictional force. Nakikita nyo ba tong controller? Hindi, no? Sana din nyo nakikita yung controller. Kasi hindi ko alam siya paano tatanggalin. Okay, but anyway, mag-reshare lang ulit ako ha, kasi nag-hang na naman siya. Share tayo. Share. Screen. Diretso ko na lang sa PowerPoint para madali. Ayun. Okay. Frictional force. Kapag po nagko-compute tayo ng friction, you just have to remember 2 things. For friction, you have to compute for the magnitude and determine the direction of your frictional force. So tandaan, frictional force is defined as the force which opposes the movement or the tendency of movement. So technically, madaling ma-determine ang direction of friction. Gagawin mo lang, kailangan mo lang malaman saan papunta ang movement. Then opposite the direction of your movement is the direction of your frictional force. Okay? Eh sir, paano po yung magnitude? Pag magnitude, isa lang naman ang formula ng friction. Ang formula po ng friction, that is equal to mu times the value of your n. Ano po sir yung mu? Mu is the coefficient of friction. N is your normal force. Sir, lagi po bang kapartner ni friction si normal? Yes. Kasi sabi ko nga, kapag may dalawang objects na magkadikit, laging dalawa ang forces. Coefficient of friction na mu at normal force na N. Okay? So, laging magkadikit yung dalawa such that your friction is equal to the coefficient of friction mu multiplied by your normal force. Ang problema nyo nga lang dito, dalawa ang possible values ng mu. There are instances na you will use mu-s at there are instances that you will use mu-k. So ano po yung mu-s? Ang mu-s is the coefficient of static friction and mu-k is the coefficient of kinetic friction. Okay? Paano po namin malalaman kung alin sa dalawa ang gagamitin? Una, kapag may binigay sa problem at hindi in-specify kung ano yun, malamang yun yung gagamitin nyo. Paano sir pag parehas pong binigay tapos isa lang naman ang tinatanong? Doon tayo ngayon magkakaproblema. You have to remember kung kailan gagamitin si mu-s at kailan gagamitin si mu-k. Okay? At malalaman natin kung kailan gagamitin si mu-s at si mu-k by determining kung anong type ng friction ang na-experience ng body ninyo. Okay? So, kailangan nating malaman kung anong type ng friction ang na-experience ng body. Ilan ba ang types ng friction? 3. Okay? So, 3 yung types ng friction at kailangan nating malaman sa kada type ano ang gagamitin. US or mu-k. Para mas madali nating ma-discuss yan, i-graph natin yung frictional force na na-experience ng body. Okay? Kahit anong body, ganito ang graph ng frictional force. Let us say, let's start with the first type ng friction, static friction. Pag sinabing static friction, that is the friction force when the body remains at rest and has a value between 0 and the limiting friction. Tingnan natin sa graph. Ito yung force na i-exert para mapagalaw yung object. Yan yung x-axis. Ang y-axis natin, that is your frictional force. Okay? Diba, there are instances na kapag magtutulak tayo ng object, kahit nag-exert na tayo ng force, hindi natin napapagalaw. Pero once unti-unti nating nilalakihan yung force, dadating ang point na mapapagalaw na natin siya. Tama? So we need to divide the graph. I-divide natin such that ito yung point wherein kapag in-exert ko na yung amount of force na to, pag in-exert ko na yung amount of force na to, magsisimula nang gumalaw yung object nyo. Magsisimula siyang mag-shift from static to dynamic. Okay? So again, nag-exert ka ng force, unti-unti mong nilalakihan yung force, unti-unti nilalakihan, pagdating dito, nung sumobra na sa point na to, nagsimula nang gumalaw yung object. Okay po? So ngayon, given that one, pag sinabing static, that is at rest or equilibrium. Pag sinabing dynamic, that is in motion. Nakuha po, ano daw yung static friction? Ibig sabihin yung static friction dito lang yun, sa side na to. Anong sabi? It is a value between 0 and the limiting friction. So yung palang friction dito, magsisimula sa 0, tapos unti-unting tataas linearly hanggang ma-reach yung limiting friction. Ano yung sinasabing limiting friction? Limiting friction is the limiting value of frictional force when the motion is impending. Ano ba pag sinabing impending motion? Again, ano tong force na to? Sir, yan po yung force na i-exert natin para po magsimulang gumalaw yung object. Ibig sabihin, pag sinabing limiting friction, magsisimula pa lang gumalaw ang object. Ang tanong, gumalaw na ba? Hindi pa. Hindi pa gumagalaw yan. Sa point na to, hindi pa siya gumagalaw. Gagalaw pa lang. Ibig sabihin, konting tulak pa, magsisimula na siyang gumalaw. Okay? So again, tinutulak mo ng tinutulak, nilalakihan mo yung force, nilalakihan hanggang sa pagdating dito, konting tulak pa, gagalaw na yung object. Okay? At ang tawag natin sa point na to, yan yung limiting friction. At pag limiting friction, the motion is impending. At that point, your mu is mus. Diyan natin gagamitin ang full value ng mus. So dito, ang frictional force ay mus times the value of n. Nakuha po? Ngayon, given that one, ano yung pag dynamic na? Pag dynamic na, pagdating dito, tandaan, si mus ay laging mas malaki kay uk. So pagdating po dito, babagsak na yung frictional force nyo, tapos magiging constant na siya. Okay? At ito na yung tinatawag natin na dynamic friction, that is the frictional resistance experienced by the body while moving. So therefore, that is dynamic, wherein that is in motion. Nakuha po? I hope nasundan na. Such that kapag dynamic or in motion na, you have to use your mu k. So therefore, that is mu k times the value of n. Okay? So therefore, that is the basic principle of frictional force. Again, kailan gagamitin ang full value ng mus? Yung buong value ng mus, gagamitin lang kapag impending motion. Yun ay kapag na-reach na yung force na mapapagalaw yung object. So therefore, mus kapag limiting friction. Once gumalaw na, you have to use uk. Pag static friction, ano sir ang gagamitin na mu? Nagre-range na yan. Kasi kita nyo naman, nagbabago yung friction kapag static. That is from 0 to mus. Okay? Any question? Based sa graph, kita naman natin na ang maximum frictional force ay kapag mus ang ginamit. So mus times the value of n. At nangyayari yon kapag impending ang motion. Okay? Sige, para mas maintindihan nyo yung principle niyan, try nating isolve yung next few problems. For now, any question muna? May tanong po? Sige, try nating isolve yung mga problems po para mas madali nyong maintindihan. Okay, for problem number 1. A man pulls a rope attached to a 100 kilogram crate as shown. If the man exerted a force of 392.4 newtons, first question, determine the frictional force if the coefficient of static friction between the crate and the floor is 0.4. Well, listen, pinapahanap ay frictional force. Automatically, hindi natin ma-determine kung gumagalaw ba yung object or hindi. Kailangan muna nating malaman, gagalaw ba yung object or hindi. Paano natin malalaman kung gagalaw or hindi? Tingnan natin yung figure. Meron ka ditong P. Binigay po ba yung value ng P? Yes, 392.4 newtons. Meron ka ditong weight. Tama? Masusolve po ba natin yung weight? Yes. Ang value ng weight, binigay ang mass 100 kilograms. Multiply mo lang sa 9.81. Next, meron ka ditong normal force. Kasi nakadikit yung crate sa surface. So meron ka ditong N. Ang tanong, may friction ba? Yes, kasi yun ang pinapahanap. Tama? Value ng frictional force. O, question ko sa inyo, ano ang value ng frictional force? Yun yung pinapahanap sa problem. Tanong lang, anong direction? To the right or to the left? Ano po ang direction ng frictional force? That is to the left. Bakit? Kasi yung magkakos ng movement mo, that is your P, that is to the right. So, ibig sabihin, dapat ang friction to the left. Ang tanong, anong value ng F ang gagamitin? Okay? Ano daw ang value ng frictional force? So, kailangan muna nating malaman, gagalaw ba or hindi yung object. Here's one way to determine kung gagalaw or hindi. Listen, calculate muna natin summation forces vertical is equal to 0. Calculate natin yung value ng N. N is upwards positive minus W, that is equal to 0. Can you now solve for N? Yes, lipat sa kabila, equal yan sa W, which is equal to 100 times 9.81. Okay? So therefore, given that one, we have 981 newtons. Okay? Listen, ang tanong ko sa inyo, para ma-determine natin kung gagalaw or hindi, ang tanong lang, kailan ba mag-uumpisang gumalaw? Mag-uumpisa, sir, gumalaw po kapag po yung force po na-exert or na-exceed na po niya yung limiting friction. So, yun ay ko-compare natin. Yung force na magpapagalaw sa object ninyo, i-compare natin dun sa maximum value ng frictional force. Tama? Such that, kapag sumobra siya sa maximum value ng frictional force, gagalaw. Kapag hindi, static siya. Tama ba? O, tanong. Ano ang maximum frictional force na kayang ma-experience ng body? Diba sabi natin, ang maximum frictional force ay μs times the value of N. Nabigay ang μs. Ano po ang value ng μs? 0.4. Na-compute ba ang N? Yes, 981. So therefore, that is equal to what? 392.4 newtons. Okay? So ngayon, kanino ko i-compare? I-compare natin ngayon yan dun sa force na magpapagalaw ng object ninyo. Yung i-oppose ni friction. Ay sino bang in-oppose ni friction? Si P. Si P daw ay 392.4 newtons. I-oppose niya si friction na 392.4 newtons din. Ano sila? They are equal. Ang tanong, pag equal yung dalawa, gagalaw ba yung object ninyo? Gagalaw or hindi? Hindi siya gagalaw. Tama, kasi equal. Kasi equal yung humihila sa tumutula. Tama ba? So, ibig sabihin kung hindi siya gumagalaw, that is considered static. Tama? Pero anong klaseng static? Equal yung dalawa. Tama ba pag sumobra pa sa P? Pag, for example, 393 na to. Tama bang pag naging 393 to, magsisimula na siyang gumalaw? Yes, kasi sumobra ka na dito. So, dito sa pagkakataon na equal yung dalawa, yan yung tinatawag natin na impending motion. So, ibig sabihin kung impending motion, that is considered static, you have to use US. Kasi equal yung dalawa. Once sumobra ka pa dito, magsisimula na siyang gumalaw. Tama? So, ibig sabihin, you have to use μs. So, kung μs, therefore, your friction is 0.4 times 981. So, therefore, the answer is 392.4 newtons. I hope nasundan yan, ha? Okay, ang pumipigil, 392.4. Ang humihila, 392.4 din. So, technically, parang nag-cancel out lang yung forces. Tama? So, technically, that is impending motion kasi equal yung forces ninyo. Nakuha po? I hope nasundan, ha? Okay, so ngayon, second question. Pinapahanap dito, based on the above conditions, what is the acceleration of the crate? Tanong, gumalaw ba? Hindi. Impending motion, pag impending motion, the crate is static. Anong acceleration? Ang acceleration, very good. Ang acceleration po ay 0. Last question. If the crate is initially at rest, what is the distance traveled by the crate after 2 seconds? Hindi nga gumalaw eh. Tama? So, walang distance traveled. Therefore, the answer for the last question is also 0. Okay? I hope nasundan yan ha. So, therefore, those are your answers for problem number 1. Any question? Sige, try natin yung number 2 para mas maintindihan ninyo. Sige, may question nata dito. Sir, always po bang friction is opposite of force? Yes, because friction is defined as the force opposing the tendency of movement or the movement itself. Okay? So kung ang tendency ng movement mo ay to the right, so opposite ng direction ng force na magpapagalaw ha. Okay? So kailangan i-compare nyo yung force na magpapagalaw at force na pipigil. Okay? Sige, try natin tong number 2 para mas maintindihan nyo. Thank you po, sir. You're welcome. Okay, sige. Number 2 tayo. Considering the figure below, the crate has a weight of W, which is 150 pounds. The coefficients of static and kinetic friction are mu s is equal to 0.3 and uk is equal to 0.2, respectively. Determine the friction force on the floor if theta is 30 degrees and P is 200 pounds. Given this one. Lagay lang natin yung values na binigay. Binigay naman po yung P. Binigay yung weight, which is 150 pounds. Binigay yung P, 200 pounds. Binigay yung theta, 30 degrees. Okay? Let us complete the free body diagram. Okay? Lagay natin yung buong free body diagram. Meron tayo ditong vertical component ng P, which is 200 sine 30 degrees. Horizontal component ng P, which is 200 cosine 30 degrees. Meron po tayo ditong normal force. Meron tayo ditong normal force. That is the value of your N. Tama. Next, saan papunta ang friction? Ang tanong, sino ba mag-cause ng friction? Hello, narinig na ako? Okay na po, ayan. Kasi nag-lowbat yung headphones ko kaya tinanggal ko, baka kaya nawala. Okay, sige, ulit. Saan po papunta ang movement, if ever? Parallel to your surface, ang movement natin ay to the right, tama? So, ibig sabihin, ang magiging direction ng friction natin ay saan papunta? Sige, saan papunta ang friction? Saan po papunta ang friction? Our friction is to the left. So, tama. This is your frictional force. Ang tanong lang dito, anong gagamitin natin? Mu S, mu K, or any other values ba ang gagamitin natin? Paano natin malalaman yan? You have to compare your maximum frictional force and the force opposing it. Tama? Question. Computin natin muna si normal force. Summation forces vertical is equal to 0. N is upwards positive. 150 is downwards negative. 200 sine 30 is upwards positive. And that will be equal to 0. Question, ilan po ang value ng N? Sige, pakisolve po, ilan po ang value ng N? Okay, the value of N is equal to 50. So therefore, that is 50 pounds. So anong gagawin natin? Computin natin si maximum frictional force. Ang tanong, Anong gagamitin for maximum frictional force? Yung 0.3 o yung 0.2? You have to use 0.3. Mu(s) po ang magbibigay ng maximum frictional force. So therefore, that is 0.3 multiplied by 50. Okay po? So ngayon, given that one, ano po ang value ng maximum frictional force? Ang maximum frictional force natin, that is equal to what? That is equal to 15 pounds. Okay po? Kanino i-compare yan? I-compare nyo yan hindi kay 200 ha. I-compare nyo yan dun sa force na nag-o-oppose kay friction. Ang tanong, sino sa mga to ang nag-o-oppose kay frictional force? Sige, kanino natin siya i-compare? Force which opposes friction. Sino yon? That is 200 cosine of 30, yung x component ni P. So therefore, that is PH, which is 200 cosine 30. Ano po ang value? Paki-check po kung tamang 173.21. Yes, sir. So tama daw, 173.21. O, kayo ang tatanungin ko. Sinong pumipigil? Friction. Gaano kalaki? 15 pounds yung pinakamalaking value na pwede niyang ibigay. Ang humihila, 173.21. Ang tanong, si F max ay less than or greater than? That is less than your pH. Sige, mas malaki ang humihila sa maximum na pwedeng pumigil. Ang tanong, static or dynamic? Dynamic yan. Tama? So, ibig sabihin, dynamic yung object natin. Kapag dynamic, tama bang kapag dynamic, isang value lang ng mu ang gagamitin? Yes, kapag dynamic, constant na po yung dynamic friction natin. Anong gagamitin na natin? Value ng mu k. So, ibig sabihin, para ma-compute natin yung frictional force, sa ngayon, para ma-compute natin ang frictional force, you have to use mu k. So, therefore, that is 0.2 multiplied by ilan? Therefore, that is equal to ilan pa? Your frictional force is 10 pounds. So, therefore, the answer is 10 pounds. Tingnan na tayo dyan. Okay, sige. So, the answer is 10 pounds. O, sige, try natin i-twist ng konti yung problem. What about for situation 2? For situation 2, the crate has a weight of 350. Same ng coefficient of static and kinetic. Ang friction force, ang theta ay 45 degrees. Ang P ay 100 pounds. Sige, try natin to ha. Your P is equal to 100. Your weight is 350 pounds. Your P is 100 pounds. So, ang theta natin naman, 45 degrees. O, lagay natin components. May dalawa tayo ditong components. That's 100 sine 45 degrees. The other one, 100 cosine 45 degrees. Okay pa? Lagay natin dito yung forces. Meron ka ditong normal force, N. Ang friction, obviously, to the right po itong force na magpapagalaw. Saan yung cursor ko? To the right yung force na magpapagalaw. Ibig sabihin, to the left ang friction. First thing that you have to do is to calculate for the value of N para ma-solve natin yung F max. So, solve natin yung N. Summation forces vertical is equal to 0. Your N is upwards, positive, minus 350 plus 100 sine 45. That will be equal to 0. Pakisolve po, ilan po ang value ng normal force. Ang Ang value ng normal force is 279.29 pounds. Okay? 279.29 pounds. So ngayon, calculate natin si Fmax. Again, you have to use your 0.3, your mu-s. So 0.3 times 279.29. Ilan po ang maximum value ng frictional force? That is 83.79 pounds. Tanong, kanino to i-compare? I-compare mo sa force na i-oppose si friction. Sino bang nag-oppose kay friction? Si 100 cosine 45. So therefore, force which opposes friction, that is your pH, which is 100 cosine 45. Ilan po ang value? That is 70.71 pounds. Okay? O, compare natin. Your maximum friction is 83.79. Ang humihila, 70.71 lang. Tama? So, mas malaki yung maximum friction kaysa kay pH. Ang tanong, static or dynamic? Sige, sagot. Static or dynamic? That is considered static po yan. Okay, static siya. Bakit? Static siya kasi hindi pa niya nare-reach yung maximum friction na 83.79. Okay? Nandito pa lang siya sa 70.71. Mas malaki yung possible na pumigil kaysa sa humihila. Ang tanong lang, anong klaseng static? Nakinig. Hindi pa yan impending motion. Bakit? Kasi para maging impending motion, kailangan niyang ma-reach yung 83.7. Ano ba yun? 83.79. Kailangan ma-reach niya yung 83.79. Kaso, nasaan pa lang daw yung force mo? Ito yung point kung saan 83.79. Kaso yung force mo, nasaan pa lang? Nasa 70.71 pa lang. Tama? So, ibig sabihin, hindi pa niya nare-reach yung impending motion. Malayo pa siya sa impending motion. So, in that case, hindi nyo gagamitin yung mu-s. Kailan lang gagamitin ng mu-s? Kapag impending motion. That is when gagamitin mo lang ang mu-s kapag equal na yung 83.79 at yung pH. In that case, dapat si pH maging 83.79 para magamit mo yung full value ng mu-s. Okay? Nasundan ha? Dapat po parehas yung dalawa para gamitin mo yung mu-s. Hindi sila parehas. Anong gagamitin natin, sir? Di ba kapag static, ano yan? Considered ano yan? Considered equilibrium. Tama? So, pwede kong gamitin ang equilibrium equations natin. Tama? Your summation forces horizontal, that will be equal to 0. So, ibig sabihin, kung forces horizontal ay equal sa 0, that is 100 cosine 45 minus F, that will be equal to 0. So, therefore, your frictional force is 70.71. Okay? Nakuha po? So, para ma-summarize natin, kapag equal si Fmax kay pH, mu-s ang gagamitin. Kapag si pH mas malaki kay Fmax, mu-k ang gagamitin. Kapag si pH mas maliit kay Fmax, summation forces horizontal is equal to 0 ang gagamitin. Okay? So therefore, that is your answer for problem number 2. Any question? May tanong po. Sir, paano po kapag naka-inclined yung crate? Kapag naka-inclined yung crate, wait lang. Sir, pwede po pabalik dun sa... Ang hirap ito. Pwede naman pala siyang lakihan. Sorry guys, di ako familiar sa Zoom. MS Teams kasi kami sa RI. Pwede po pabalik dun sa number 1. May titingnan lang po, sir. Sige, wait lang ha. Sagutin ko lang kapag yung naka-incline yung crate. Kapag naka-incline yung crate, sige, I guess this will be the last problem kasi we only have 7 minutes left. Basically, na ano naman yung principle ng friction. Okay, again, kapag naka-incline po yung crate, since yung friction nyo, for example, hinihila to ng force pa ganyan. Okay, so kapag naka-incline yan, ito yung friction mo. Tama? Ito yung weight mo. Wait lang. Oops. Ayusin natin. Ito yung weight mo. Tama? Magkakaroon yan ngayon ng dalawang components. Isang horizontal component yung weight, isang vertical component dito. So technically, part C weight nang i-oppose ni friction. So you have to get the resultant ng horizontal component nitong force at yung horizontal component ng weight. Yun yung i-oppose ni friction. Yun yung value ng pH. Okay? I hope nasundan. Again, kapag may weight ka dito, magkakaroon siya ng dalawang component. Isang horizontal, isang vertical. Yung force na in-exert, dalawang component din. Isang horizontal, isang vertical. So yung dalawang horizontal na to, kunin mo ang resultant, yun yung i-compare mo kay friction. Basta lahat ng mag-o-oppose kay friction or lahat ng kontra kay friction, lahat ng i-oppose niya, pag samasamahin nyo, yun yung i-compare nyo kay friction. Okay? Okay, sir. Thank you po. You're welcome. Next. Sir, pwede po pabalik dun sa number 1. Pabalik daw sa number 1. Number 1 ng problem na to. Sige. Okay na po. Paki-chat na lang po kapag okay na ha. Then I'll wait for more questions because we only have 5 minutes left. Okay na po, sir. Thank you. You're welcome. Next. Sige, any more questions? As much as I want to discuss more problems, medyo binitin tayo sa oras. You don't have to worry. May mga problems pa naman na ibibigay gawin na lang gawin ko. Bigay ko na lang yung solution ng ibang problems na hindi na-discuss para maaral nyo din. If ever you have questions, you can freely message us. Okay? Any more questions? May tanong po? Going once, twice, thrice. So again, for friction ha, tandaan, ang i-compare ay si Fmax. Deformable bodies ang topic bukas, sir. Yes. Bukas strength of materials kayo. Okay? Okay. Going back to this one, again, compare si Fmax at si pH. Kapag si Fmax at pH ay equal, that is impending motion. You have to use mu s. Pag mas maliit yung friction, ibig sabihin, gagalaw yung object. Ibig sabihin po, that is UK. Kapag mas malaki yung friction, hindi gagalaw ang object, summation forces horizontal is equal to 0. Okay? So, I guess that's it. Thank you, guys. Andito po ba si sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Andito pa.
Sir. Sir, I guess that's it po for our class for today. So, thank you, sir, for accommodating po us for today. We'll just continue, sir, tomorrow. I guess the subjects for tomorrow is the second part of mathematics. Then po, for the afternoon, we have strength of materials po.
Yes, sir. Same time, sir. Same time.
Okay, sir. makikisend na lang po sir nung link po for the Zoom class para po may forward po namin sa mga lecturers po.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
We'll just coordinate, sir, regarding the handouts po and the copy of the presentation po.
Yeah, okay.
Okay po. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone, for listening. In behalf of RI, we would like to thank Sir Victor Villaluz for accommodating us today. Thank you for these students. I know it's weekend today. It's hard to study today kasi medyo weekend vibes tayo today. But we want to thank you guys for still attending our classes for today. I hope you learned something from us, from Sir Mike and from me, Sir Angel. Again, thank you guys for listening and have a great day. Keep safe, everyone. Sir, keep safe po. Ingat po tayo lahat.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, everyone. Sana
Thank
makita
you,
natin
sir.
sa
Thank you,
personal
sir.
someday.
Po, sir.
Thank you, sir.